breakfast at about 8:30, and I left this building at 3:30. That was pretty good. Not bad. I was here until about 3:40, 3:30 last night, so, or this morning, I guess. And so was Curtis, who I don't see. Apparently donkeys need to sleep more than I do. Kirk was there too, but he made it up this morning. What time did we leave? About 3:30 plus, right? 3:34, 3:30 something, right? Yeah. Kirk was here too, so. All right. And he looks pretty wide-eyed and bushy-tailed over there, so. What was that? Ready to go. Just walk in that rain a little bit, it'll get you right up. Because the first time I saw him this morning, he looked quite soaked. All right, so I got that done with this. I guess you want to go first. Oh, okay. Just a guess on my part. I've got this. Okay, let me know when we're starting. I love when I ask them that question. They're like, well, we're already on. See? Oh, we're already broadcasting? How long has that been going on? As far as sound-wise. So you got to all hear me talk about my anger issues and confessing all my sins and... I can see them behind the control panel going, shh, don't tell Rabbi he's actually on. Okay. This is good stuff. We're going to make it in focus. It'll be called How to Properly Select Your CDs on the CD Table. What was that? Pretty much. All right, so you said we're broadcasting, right? We're ready to start? All right, so welcome to day 2 of the Deuteronomy readings. I apologize for not being here yesterday, but there was a situation that needed my attention. And I was very blessed to have someone like David to be able to step in and take over for that. And so we're going to get started here today. I just want to just going to make a couple of announcements. I may repeat them between the readings and the discussion just to make sure everybody gets the announcements, because we do have a few things that I want to make sure to cover, that we've made a few changes. I did announce them at breakfast, but some of you may have already left breakfast or not even been to breakfast. So let me just cover those things real quickly here on the schedule. I don't think this will affect anybody on the live stream, although I'm not sure what we're streaming or we're not streaming. So, okay. And so I'll need to get you a copy of what I changed, because right now this is the only copy of what I changed. All right. First of all, let's praise Yah that we had that one sunny day we needed to do the mikveh on Tuesday. And it was quite beautiful and mostly not raining yesterday. I mean, so the 2 days we needed it the most, we didn't have rain. So that was pretty good. It was pretty good. Praise Yah for that. Okay, so we have on the schedule today a couples class. I just want to be clear that by couples class, it's not just because you're already a couple. It could be for you because you're looking to become part of a couple at some point, whether you've been married before or you're looking to get married again, or you've been widowed, or you're single and never been married, but you want to understand how to do that right or get ready for it and all the things related to that. And so in the incredible anointing that I have, we're going to fix all of that in about an hour and a half. I don't know why other ministries take, series to do that, but we'll fix that in from 2 o'clock to 3:45. Just short of 3 hours. Just short of 2 hours. Okay, no, I'm kidding. We're not going to cover everything in a thorough way. We're going to touch on some things. We're going to try to do more classes and courses for that. We may even do like a retreat at some point where people can come and spend a couple of days and really work on these things. I think how many of you would like a couples retreat of some sort? Okay. I'm going to ask the question, don't put your hands up. How many of you can actually afford to go to one? Everybody wants to go to one. Okay, yeah, we don't really have enough to do that. We're going to talk about that this afternoon. A little bit about finances, a little bit about everything. Okay, also up to the challenge that's scheduled after the couples class, we may actually spill over a little bit into that, depending on how things are going in the couples class, because since after all I'm doing both those classes, so it's my time anyway. Am I losing the mic on and off? Okay. All right. Don't forget tonight, Curtis is going to be teaching after supper at 7:30 in this room. Okay, I encourage all of you to be here. I think it's going to be quite good. That's part of why we were up until 3 in the morning in here working on our materials for our 2 classes. And yes, I know you may find this shocking, but I actually prepared for the couples class. And wrote some stuff and have some stuff ready for it. Okay, now, by that I mean a loose outline with bullet points. That's what we got. All right, Friday. Okay, Friday. For those of you who want to do the Pidyon HaBen, the redeeming of the firstborn, as we read about in Leviticus, we read about it in Exodus, as well as we read about it in Numbers. We didn't do Numbers yet in the teachings recently, but we've read it before. Numbers 3, 46, 47 is the verses, and also in Leviticus 34, 26 or something like that. Okay? Somewhere in Exodus 34. So, what was the verse that I gave you? 34:20, thank you. Okay, so we're going to do that on Friday as part of that Up to the Challenge that's written on your schedule. We'll do that first at 2 o'clock. That'll run about 20, 30 minutes. Then those of you that want anointing and prayer for healing should be here for that, because right afterwards we're going to be doing that. So we'll have leadership here, and we'll be praying for the people that have need for things to be prayed over. Okay, so we'll do that on Friday. And then I've got counseling sessions scheduled Friday from 3 o'clock until supper. I have people scheduled from 3 till about 5. So I do have time to fit in about 1 or 2 people between 5 and 6, 1 at 5, 1 at 5:30. If you want one of those slots, please let me know, and we'll put you down on the paper for that. And then on Friday night, again, we will have a Curtis Reed teaching. We're also going to be doing Erev Shabbat. I haven't announced that really before. We're going to be doing that in here before we go to supper. So I got to make sure that we're leaving time to do that. So the dance class on Friday afternoon may be shortened by a little bit, maybe be done at about 5:30 so we can get people over here. Well, you'll already be here if you're here for the dance class, but we'll be here, and we're going to do a quick little Kiddush and Motzi and a little Erev Shabbat service, which didn't take more than about 15, 20 minutes before we go over to eat in the dining hall. Marty, we're going to do the Erev Shabbat service. I'd like to do it on the screen. That way I don't have to hand out copies to everybody, so I'll have to get that to you as a PowerPoint. Okay, also I have a PowerPoint that I need to do this afternoon in the classes. I just have like one slide to get up on the screen, okay? Okay. Then here's the other big change. So on Sunday, the Q&A Midrash that was going to be scheduled for nighttime has been moved to the 4 o'clock slot instead of a dance class. I apologize for all you dancers, but you're about to lose a class because we're going to gain instead putting in that slot after supper doing Breshit, the first Torah portion. Yay. Okay. It's too early in the morning. I know that was underwhelming. Okay. Okay, but somebody came up with the idea. I really thought it was a good idea, thanks to Raymond Romlow. He said, I think I have a way to fix this problem where you were not sure how to either skip a Torah portion or do a double or how you were going to do it. He said, well, what if we were to make a slot for it this way? And I said, that could work. So we're still going to have the Midrash and the Q&A session, and we'll just move it to 4 o'clock. And then we'll take the 7:30 slot, and we'll do that for Bereshit. So for those of you on the live stream, we will be live streaming it. I'm not sure if we're going to be using Adobe Connect or YouTube. Look for the YouTube, and we'll see how we can work that out, okay? Because I'm not sure yet how to do the group dynamic live here and still broadcast it and let people interact and how that could work. But we'll try to get that figured out. Okay. So I think that covers it for all of the changes. Remember I told you at the beginning we're playing with this concept of flexible reality. And we're going to adjust the things as they come up. So this should work out well. Also on Sunday, where we're making all those changes and the Torah portion and everything else, the 2 o'clock session will be, again, counseling sessions, because some of you have already asked for that. So I do have slots between 2 and 4, which means I have every 30 minutes. So at 2 o'clock, a 2:30, a 3, and a 3:30. So there's 4 slots. And so if you'd like one of those slots, actually, I've already got somebody in at 2 o'clock. So just write that down. Okay, so I have 3 more slots on Sunday. So just make sure to see me after services, and I can write you down for the Sunday sessions. All right, so that was a lot of announcements to get us started today. And so what I'm going to do to save my voice is I'm going to ask Mr. David Botwick-Reese to come up and lead the readings. So if you want to come on up. And I will come up at the after we finish the readings, after he finishes with the traditional blessing at the end of the readings, and then I will come up and we'll work on the Midrash and discussion. Okay, so here is... No, you could just... I didn't even write that in the list this time, so... Okay, and then here you go. So you're all good. Okay.
Good morning again. Boker Tov. All right, we're going to continue making our way through the book of Deuteronomy. And we have 12 readers in total. We have 2 up here. So we'll need 10 more. So make your way to slots 2, 3, and 5. And then if you want to sit in the front row, and then we'll just sort through the queue. Remember, we're going to read through it, and then afterwards, Rabbi will come back and lead the Midrash. It was such a wonderful time on Tuesday. I think we spent most of it in chapter 1, but it just shows you that, like Rabbi says in the Torah study, whatever we're going to receive, that's what it's going to be. We're not going to obviously find out everything because that's impossible, and focus on the useful, not just the interesting or the entertaining. Where is my prayer? Oh. So we're starting in chapter 8, and we will begin. First up, we have Dawid. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Dawid, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, verses 1 through 20 in Deuteronomy 8.
Guard to do every command which I command you today, that you might live and shall increase and go in and shall possess the land of which Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh swore to your fathers. And you shall remember that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh your Elohim led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you, to prove you, to know what is in your heart, whether you guard his commands or not. And he humbled you and let you suffer hunger and fed you with manna, which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, to make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of Yahweh. Your garments did not wear out on you, nor did your foot swell these 40 years. Thus you shall know in your heart that as a man disciplines his son, so Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh your Elohim disciplines you. Therefore you shall guard the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in his ways and to fear him. For Yahweh your Elohim is bringing you into a good land, a land of streams of water, of fountains and springs that flow out of valleys and hills, a land of wheat and barley, of vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey, a land in which you shall eat bread without scarcity, in which you do not lack at all, a land whose stones are iron and out of whose hills you dig copper. And you shall eat and be satisfied, and shall bless Yahweh your Elohim for the good land which he has given you. Be on guard, lest you forget Yahweh your Elohim, by not guarding his commands, and his right rulings, and his laws, which I command you today, lest you eat and shall be satisfied, and build lovely houses and shall dwell in them, and your herds and your flocks increase, and your silver and your gold are increased, and all that you have is increased, that your heart then becomes lifted up, and you forget Yahweh your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim from the house of bondage, who led you through that great and awesome wilderness, fiery serpents and scorpions and thirst, where there was no water, who brought water for you out of the flinty rock, who fed you in the wilderness with manna, which your fathers did not know, in order to humble you, to try you, to do you good in the end. You then shall say in your heart, my power and the strength of my hand have made for me this wealth. But you shall remember Yahweh your Elohim, for it is he who has given you power to get wealth, in order to establish his covenant which he swore to your fathers, as it is today. And it shall be, if you by any means forget Yahweh your Elohim, and follow other mighty ones, and serve them, and bow yourself to them, I have warned you this day, that you shall certainly perish, like the nations which Yahweh is destroying before you. So you are to perish, because you did not obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim.
Amen, amen. Thank you, Doed. Next up, we have Mr. Nate Taylor. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. May he bless Nate, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen, amen. So starting chapter 9, verses 1 through 14.
Hear, O Yisrael, you are passing over the Yarden today, to go in to dispossess the nations greater and stronger than yourself, cities great and walled up to the heavens, a people great and tall, the descendants of the Anakim, whom you know and of whom you heard it said, who does stand before the descendants of Anak? And you shall know today that Yahweh your Elohim is he who is passing over before you as a consuming fire. He does destroy them and subdue them before you. So you shall dispossess them and destroy them quickly, as Yahweh has said to you. Do not think in your heart, after Yahweh your Elohim has driven them out before you, saying, because of my righteousness, Yahweh has brought me in to possess this land. But it is because of the wrong of these nations that Yahweh is driving them out before you. It is not because of your righteousness or the uprightness of your heart that you go in to possess their land, but because of the wrong of these nations that Yahweh your Elohim drives them out before you, in order to establish the word which Yahweh swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Yitzhak, and Yaakov. And you shall know that Yahweh your Elohim is not giving you this good land to possess because of your righteousness, for you are a stiff-necked people. Remember, do not forget how you provoked to wrath Yahweh your Elohim in the wilderness, from the day that you came out of the land of Mitzrayim until you came to this place. You have been rebellious against Yahweh. Even in Horeb you made Yahweh wroth, so that Yahweh was enraged with you to destroy you. When I went up into the mountain to receive the tablets of stone, the tablets of the covenant which Yahweh made with you, then I stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. I did not eat bread, nor did I drink water. Then Yahweh gave me the 2 tablets of stone, which with the finger of Elohim, which were written with the finger of Elohim. And on them there were all the words which Yahweh had spoken to you on the mountain from the midst of the fire in the day of the assembly. And it came to be at the end of 40 days and 40 nights that Yahweh gave me the 2 tablets of stone, the tablets of the covenant. Then Yahweh said to me, arise, go down quickly from here, for your people whom you brought out of Mitzrayim have acted corruptly. They have quickly turned aside from the way which I commanded them. They have made themselves a molded image. And Yahweh spoke to me, saying, I have seen this people, and look, they are stiff-necked people. Leave me alone so that I destroy them and blot them out their name from under the heavens, and make of you a nation stronger and greater than they. So I turned and came down from the mountain, and the mountain burned with fire, and the 2 tablets of the covenant were in my 2 hands. And I looked and saw that you had sinned against Yahweh your Elohim, and had made for yourselves a molded calf. You had quickly turned aside from the way which Yahweh had commanded you. And I looked, and I took the 2 tablets, and threw them out of my 2 hands, and broke them before your eyes. And I fell down before Yahweh, as at the first, 40 days and 40 nights, I did not eat bread, and I did not drink water, because of all your sins which you committed in doing evil in the eyes of Yahweh to provoke him. For I was afraid of the displeasure and rage which Yahweh was wroth with you to destroy you. But Yahweh listened to me that time once more.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Nate. Next up, we have Ali, and we will start in 19. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Ali, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. Okay, Ali, you're going to take us from 15 to 29. Yeah, we'll read those 4 again.
So I turned and came down from the mountain, and the mountain burned with fire, and the 2 tablets of the covenant were in my 2 hands. And I looked and saw that you had sinned against Yahweh your Elohim, and had made for yourselves a molded calf. You had quickly turned aside from the way which Yahweh had commanded you. And I took the 2 tablets, and threw them out of my 2 hands, and broke them before your eyes. And I fell down before Yahweh as at the first, 40 days and 40 nights. I did not eat bread, and I did not drink water, because of all your sins which you committed in doing evil in the eyes of Yahweh to provoke him. For I was afraid of the displeasure and rage with which Yahweh was wroth with you to destroy you. But Yahweh listened to me that time once more, and Yahweh was very enraged with Aharon to destroy him. So I prayed for Aharon at that time also. And I took your sin, the calf which you had made, and burned it with fire, and crushed it, and ground it very small, until it was as fine as dust. And I threw its dust into the stream that came down from the mountain, and at Taberah, and at Massa, and at Kibrot Hataweh, you made Yahweh wroth. And when Yahweh sent you from Kadesh Barnea, saying, Go up and possess the land which I have given you, then you rebelled against the mouth of Yahweh, your Elohim, and you neither trusted him nor listened to his voice. You have been rebellious against Yahweh from the day that I knew you. So I fell down before Yahweh the 40 days and 40 nights. For I fell down because Yahweh had said he would destroy you. And I prayed to Yahweh and said, O Master Yahweh, do not destroy your people and your inheritance, whom you have ransomed in your greatness, whom you have brought out of Mitzrayim with a strong hand. Remember your servants Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Do not look on the stubbornness of this people, or on their wrong, or on their sin, lest the land from which you brought us should say, because Yahweh was not able to bring them to the land which he promised them, and because he hated them, he has brought them out to kill them in the wilderness. And they are your people and your inheritance, whom you brought out by your great power and by your outstretched arm.
Amen, amen. Thank you, Ali. Next up, we have Tim. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless him who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to start chapter 10, verses 1 through 11.
At that time, Jehovah said to me, hew for yourself 2 tablets of stone like the first, and come up to me on the mountain, and you shall make for yourself an ark of wood. Then I write on the tablets with words that were on the first tablets, which you broke, and you shall put them in the ark. So I made an ark of acacia wood, hewed 2 tablets of stone like the first, and went up the mountain with the 2 tablets in my hand. And he wrote on the tablets, according to the first writing, the 10 words, which Jehovah had spoken to you in the mountain from the midst of the fire on the day of the assembly. Then Jehovah gave them to me, and I turned and came down from the mountain and put the tablets in the ark which I had made, and they are there, just as Jehovah commanded me. Now the children of Israel set out from the wells of Benai, Yakin, to Metzorah. Aaron died there, and he was buried there, and Eleazar, his son, became priest in his place. From there they sent out to Gudgoad, and from Gudgoad to Yotbatah, the land of rivers of water. At the time Jehovah separated the tribe of Levi to bear the ark of the covenant, Jehovah did stand before to serve him and to bless his name in that day. There Levi has no portion nor inheritance with his brothers. Jehovah is his inheritance, as Jehovah your Elohim promised him. And I stayed in the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. And Jehovah heard me at that time, and also he chose not to destroy you. And Jehovah said to me, arise, go before the people to set out, and let them go and possess the land which I swore to their fathers to give them. And now Israel, what is Jehovah your Elohim asking of you but to fear Jehovah your Elohim and walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve Jehovah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being, to guard the commands of Jehovah and his laws which I command you today for the good. See, the heavens and the heavens belong to Jehovah your Elohim, also the earth with all that is in it. Jehovah delighted only in your fathers to love them, and he chose their seed after them, and you above all peoples, as it is today. And you shall circumcise the foreskin of your heart, and harden your neck no more. For Jehovah your Elohim is Elohim of the mighty. Yeah. And Master of masters, the great El, mighty and awesome, who shows no partiality nor takes a bribe.
Amen. Thank you, Tim. Where did we leave off? 17. All right. Well, I guess we need to hear it twice this morning. It's all good. Never enough scripture to read. Next up, we have Frederick. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. May he bless Frederick, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. So yeah, we'll go 12 to 22 in chapter 10.
And now, Israel, what is Yahweh your Elohim asking of you, but to fear Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being, to guard the commands of Yahweh and his laws which I command you today for your good. See, the heavens and the heaven of heavens belong to Yahweh your Elohim, also the earth, and with all that is in it. Yahweh delighted only in your fathers to love them, and he chose their seed after them, you above all peoples, as it is today. And you shall circumcise the foreskin of your heart, harden your neck no more. For Yahweh your Elohim is Elohim of the mighty ones and master of masters, the great El, mighty and awesome, who shows no partiality nor takes a bribe. He executes right rulings for the fatherless and the widow, loves the stranger, giving him food and a garment. And you shall love the stranger, for you are strangers in the land of Mitzrayim. Fear Yahweh your Elohim. Serve him and cling to him and swear by his name. He is your praise, and he is your Elohim, who has done for you these great and awesome deeds which your eyes have seen. Your fathers went down to Mitzrayim with 70 beings, and now Yahweh your Elohim has made you as numerous as the stars of the heavens.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Frederick. Next up, we have Laura. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Laura, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of her hands. Amen. Amen. Now we are into chapter 11, verses 1 through 15. 1 through 15 in 11.
And you shall love Yahweh, your Elohim, and guard his charge, even his laws and his right rulings and his commands always. And you shall know today, for it is not your children who have not known and who have not seen the discipline of Yahweh, your Elohim, and his greatness, his strong hand, and his outstretched arm, and his signs and his works which he has done in the midst of Mizraim, to Pharaoh, sovereign of Mizraim, and all his land, and that which he had done to the armies of Mizraim, to the horses and their chariots, when he made the waters of the sea of reeds overflow them as they pursued you, and how Yahweh has destroyed them to this day, and what he had done for you in the wilderness till you came to this place, and what he had done to Dathan and to Abiram and the sons of Eliab and Reuben, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up, and their households, and their tents, and their living creatures, and that were in their possession in the midst of all of Israel. For yours are the eyes that saw all the great works of Yahweh, which he did. And you shall guard every command which I command you today, so that you are strong, and shall go in, and shall possess the land which you are passing over to possess, and to prolong the days in the land which Yahweh swore to give your fathers, to them and their descendants, the land flowing with milk and honey. For the land which you are going to possess is not like the land of Mizraim, from which you have come, where you sowed your seed and watered it by foot as the vegetable garden. But the land which you are passing over to possess is the land of the hills and the valleys, which drink water from the rain of the heavens, and the land which Yahweh your Elohim took after. The eyes of Yahweh your Elohim are always on it, from the beginning of the year to the latter end of the year. And it shall be that you diligently obey my commands, which I command you today, to love Yahweh your Elohim, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your being. Then I shall give you the rain for your land in its season, the early rain and the latter rain, and you shall gather in your grain and your new wine and your oil. And I shall give grass in the fields for your livestock, and you shall eat and be satisfied.
Amen, amen. Thank you, Laura. Next up, to finish chapter 11, we have Jared. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Jared, who's come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. So yeah, verses 16 to 32, the end of the chapter in 11.
Thank you. Guard yourselves, lest your heart be deceived, and you turn aside and serve other mighty ones and bow down to them. Then the displeasure of Yah shall burn against you, and he shall shut up the heavens, and there be no rain, and the land not give it its increase. And you shall perish quickly from the good land which Yah is giving you. And you shall lay up these words of mine in your heart and in your being, and shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall teach them to your children, and speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates, so that your days and the days of your children are increased on the soil of which Yah swore to your fathers to give them, as the days of the heavens on the earth. For if you diligently guard to do all these commands which I command you to do, it, to love Yah your Elohim, to walk in all his ways, and to cling to him, then Yah shall drive out all these nations before you, and you shall dispossess greater and stronger nations than you. Every place on which the soil of your foot treads is yours, from the wilderness and Lebanon, from the river Euphrates, even to the western sea is your border. No man shall stand against you. Yah your Elohim shall put the dread of you and the fear of you upon all the land where you tread, as he has spoken to you. See, I am setting before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing when you obey the commands of Yah your Elohim, which I command you today, and the curse if you do not obey the commands of Yah your Elohim, but turn aside from the way which I command you today, to go after other mighty ones which you have not known. And it shall be, when Yah your Elohim has brought you into the land which you go to possess, that you shall put the blessing on Mount Gerizim and the curse on Mount Ebal. Are they not beyond the Jordan, toward the setting sun, in the land of the Canaanites, who dwell in the desert plain opposite Gilgal, beside the terebinth trees of Moreh? For you are passing over the Jordan to go in to possess the land which Yah your Elohim is giving you, and you shall possess it and dwell in it, and shall guard to do all these laws and right rulings which I am setting before you today.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Jared. Next up we have Robert. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Robert, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. Okay, in chapter 12, verses 1 through 16. Yeah, you can just put it right on top if you want.
These are the laws and right rulings which you guard to do in the land which Yahweh Elohim of your fathers is giving to you to possess all the days that you live on the soil. Completely destroy all the places where the nations which you are dispossessing serve their mighty ones, on the high mountains and on the hills and under every green tree. And you shall break down their slaughter places and smash their pillars and burn their Asherim with fire. And you shall cut down the carved images of the mighty ones and shall destroy their name out from that place. Do not do so to Yahweh your Elohim, but seek the place which Yahweh your Elohim chooses out of all your tribes to put his name there for his dwelling place, and there you shall enter. And there you shall take your ascending offerings and your slaughters and your tithes and the contributions of your hand and your vowed offerings and your voluntary offerings and the firstlings of your herd and of your flock. And there you shall eat before Yahweh your Elohim, and shall rejoice in all that you put your hand to, you and your household, in which Yahweh your Elohim has blessed you. Do not do as we are doing here today, each one doing whatever is right in his own eyes, because you have not yet entered the rest and the inheritance which Yahweh your Elohim has given you. But you shall pass over the Jordan and shall dwell in the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you to inherit. And he shall give you rest from all your enemies round about, and you shall dwell in safety. And it shall be that unto the place which Yahweh your Elohim chooses to make his name dwell there, there you are going to bring all that I command you, your ascending offerings and your slaughterings and your tithes and the contributions of your hand, and all your choice offerings which you vow to Yahweh. And you shall rejoice before Yahweh your Elohim, you and your sons and your daughters and your male servants and your female servants, and the Levite who is within your gates, since he has no portion nor inheritance with you. Guard yourselves that you do not offer your ascending offerings in every place that you see, except in the place where Yahweh chooses. In one of your tribes, there you are to offer your ascending offerings, and there you are to do all that I command you. Only whatever your being desires, you shall slaughter and eat, according to the blessings of Yahweh, your Elohim, which he has given you within all your gates. The unclean and the clean do eat of it, of the gazelle and of the deer alike. Only the blood you do not eat, pour it on the earth like water.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Robert. Next up, we have Olivier. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Olivier, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart ones bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, we're going to finish chapter 12. I'm just going to pull it back up here for you. Verses 17 to 32. Start right here to the end of the chapter.
You are not allowed to eat within your gates the tithes of your grain, or of your new wine, or of your oil, or of the firstlings of your herd or your flock, or of any of your offerings which you vow, or of your voluntary offerings, or of the contribution of your hand. But eat them before Yahweh your Elohim, in the place which Yahweh your Elohim chooses, you on your son, on your daughter, on your male servant, on your female servant, on the Levite who is within your gates. And you shall rejoice we shall rejoice before Yahweh your Elohim in all that you put your hands to. Guard yourself that you do not forsake the Levite as long as you live in your land. When Yahweh your Elohim enlarges your border, as he has promised you, and you say, let me eat meat, because you long to eat meat. You eat as much meat as your being desires. When the place where Yahweh your Elohim chooses to put his name is too far from you, then you shall slaughter your herd from your flock, which Yahweh has given you, as I have commanded you. And you shall eat within your gates as much as your being desires. Only as the gazelle and the deer are eaten, so you are to eat of it. The unclean and the clean alike eat of it. Only be strong not to eat the blood, for the blood is the life. Do not eat the life with the meat. Do not eat it. You pour it on the earth like water. Do not eat it, that it might be well with you and your children after you, when you do what is right in the eyes of Yahweh. Only the set-apart gifts which you have on your vowed offerings you are to take up and go to the place which Yahweh chooses. And you shall make your outstanding offerings, the meat and the blood, on the slaughter place of Yahweh your Elohim. And the blood of your slaughterings is poured out on the slaughter place of Yahweh your Elohim, and you eat the meat. Guard and obey all these words which I command you, that it might be well with you and your children after you forever, when you do what is good and right in the eyes of Yahweh your Elohim. When Yahweh your Elohim does cut off before you the nations which you go to dispossess, and you dispossess them and dwell in their land, guard yourself that you are not ensnared to follow them after they are destroyed from before you, and that you do not inquire about their mighty ones, saying, how did these nations serve their mighty ones? And let me do so too. Do not do so to Yahweh your Elohim, for every abomination which Yahweh hates, they have done to the mighty ones. For they even burned their sons and daughters in the fire to the mighty ones. All the words I am commanding you, guard to do it. Do not add to it, not take away from it.
Amen. Thank you so much. Go ahead. Next up we have Bill. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Bill, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. In chapter 13, well, you're going to read the entire chapter, verses 1 through 18 in chapter 13.
When there arises among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and he shall give you a sign or a wonder, And the sign of wonder shall come true, of which he has spoken to you, saying, let us go after other mighty ones which you have not known, and serve them. Do not listen to the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, for Yahweh, your Elohim, is trying you to know whether you love Yahweh, your Elohim, with all your heart and with all your being. Walk after Yahweh, your Elohim, and fear him, and guard his commands, and obey his voice, and serve him, and cling to him. And that prophet or that dreamer of dreams is put to death, because he has spoken apostasy against Yahweh, your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, and ransomed you from the house of bondage, to make you stray from the way in which Yahweh, your Elohim, commanded you to walk. Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst. When your brother, the son of your mother, or your son, or your daughter, or the wife of your bosom, or your friend, who is as your own being, entices you secretly, saying, let us go and serve other mighty ones, which you have not known, neither you nor your fathers, of the mighty ones of the people which are all around you, near to you or far off from you, from one end of the earth to the other end of the earth. Do not agree with him or listen to him, nor shall your eye pardon him, nor spare him or conceal him, but you shall certainly kill him. Your hand is first against him, to put him to death, and afterward the hand of all the people. And you shall stone him with stones until he dies, because he has sought to entice you away from Yahweh your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, from the house of bondage. And let all Yisrael hear and fear, and not again do any such evil matter as this in your midst. When you hear someone in one of your cities, which Yahweh your Elohim gives you to dwell in, saying, some men, sons of Belial, have gone out of your midst and led the inhabitants of their city astray, saying, let us go and serve other mighty ones whom you have not known. Then you shall inquire, search out, and ask diligently, and see if the matter is true, and establish that this abomination was done in your midst. You shall certainly strike the inhabitants of that city with the edge of the sword, putting it under the ban, and all that is in it, and its livestock, with the edge of the sword. And gather all its plunder into the middle of the street, and completely burn with fire the city and all its plunder before Yahweh your Elohim, and it shall be a heap forever, never to be built again. And none of that which is put under the ban is to cling to your hand, so that Yahweh turns from the fierceness of his displeasure and shall show you compassion, love you, and increase you, as he swore to your fathers, when you obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim, to guard all his commands which I command you today, to do what is right in the eyes of Yahweh your Elohim.
Amen, amen. Thank you, Bill. Next up we have Dan. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Dan, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. Okay, you're going to read verses 1 through 20 in chapter 14.
You are the children of Yahweh, your Elohim. Do not cut yourselves, nor shave the front of your head for the dead. For you are a set-apart people to Yahweh, your Elohim, and Yahweh has chosen you to be a people for himself, a treasured possession above all the peoples who are on the face of the earth. Do not eat whatever is abominable. These are the living creatures which you do eat: ox, sheep, and goat, deer, and gazelle, and roebuck, and wild goat, and mountain goat, and antelope, and mountain sheep, and every beast that has a split hoof divided in two, chewing the cud, among the beasts you do eat. But of those chewing the cud, or those having a split hoof completely divided, you do not eat, such as these: the camel, the hare, and the rabbit. For they chew the cud, but they do not have a split hoof. They are unclean for you. And the pig is unclean for you, because it has a split hoof, but does not chew the cud. You do not eat their flesh, or touch their dead carcasses. These you do eat of all that are in the waters. All that have fins and scales you do eat. And whatever does not have fins and scales you do not eat. It is unclean for you. Any clean bird you do eat, but these you do not eat: the eagle, the vulture, and the black vulture, and the red kite, and the falcon, and the buzzards after their kinds, and every raven after its kind, and the ostrich, and the nighthawk, and the seagull, and the hawk, and after their kinds, the little owl, and the great owl, and the white owl, and the pelican, and the carrion vulture, and the fisher owl, and the stork, and the heron after its kind, and the hoopoe, and the bat. And every creeping insect that flies is unclean for you. They are not eaten. Any clean bird you do eat.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Dan. Next up, and our final reader for day 2 of our Deuteronomy readings is Robert. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Robert, who has come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. You'll finish chapter 14, verses 21 to 29.
Do not eat whatever dies of itself. Give it to the stranger who is within your gates to eat it, or sell it to a foreigner, for you are a set-apart people to Yahweh your Elohim. Do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. You shall tithe without fail all the yield of your grain, and the field brings forth every year. And you shall eat before Yahweh your Elohim in the place where he chooses to make his name dwell, the tithe of your grain, and your new wine, and your oil, and of the firstlings of your herds and your sheep, so that you learn to fear Yahweh your Elohim always. But when the way is too long for you, so that you are not able to bring the tithe, or when the place where Yahweh your Elohim chooses to put his name is too far from you, when Yahweh your Elohim is blessing you, then you shall give it in silver, and shall take the silver in your hand and go to the place which Yahweh your Elohim chooses. And you shall use the silver for whatever your being desires, for cattle or sheep, for wine or strong drink, for whatever your being desires. And you shall eat there before Yahweh your Elohim, and you shall rejoice, you and your household. And you do not forsake the Levite who is within your gates, for he has no part nor inheritance with you. And at the end of every 3rd year, you bring out all the tithe of your increase of that year and store it up within your gates. And the Levite, because he has no portion nor inheritance with you, and the sojourner and the fatherless and the widow who are within your gates shall come and eat and be satisfied, so that Yahweh your Elohim does bless you in all the work of your hand which you do.
Amen. Thank you, Robert, and thank you to all our readers. Get another round of applause for all our readers today. It's truly a blessing to read before brothers and sisters. So we're going to recite the traditional closing blessing, and then we'll proceed with the Midrash once Rabbi gets back. Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Yahweh noten haTorah. Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us a Torah of truth and has planted eternal life in our midst. Blessed are you, Yahweh, giver of the Torah. Amen. Amen. And I apologize if I look a little sleepy this morning. As we know, Rabbi Steve teaches discipleship is a duplication and imitation process, so I've been staying up as late as I can every night this week. So Dawid has one mic. Do we have another one? I have the other mic, so we will figure that out. But if you have a question, again, Rabbi Steve teaches every night in the Torah study, and if you haven't been to one, highly recommend it. We always look for the useful. Where can you see yourself in the Torah portion? Because that is how we can immediately apply it to our walk. And then, of course, Rabbi Steve will be able to handle the other questions, that we've always wanted to know and point you in the direction of that, maybe in one of his teachings. So if you have a question, go ahead and start. And maybe somebody can signal Rabbi. Yeah, just wait 1 second. Rabbi's coming down the aisle. and Dale will have the other mic.
I guess that'll still work. It's the wrong stand, but the size mic, but it'll fit in there. Be all right. All right, shalom, everyone. Shalom. All right, another excellent day of readings. There's nothing like reading the Word, and one of my favorite things to read, of course, is Deuteronomy. Now, of course, I know there wasn't a whole lot in there today, so we don't have a lot to discuss, so we can end this pretty quickly here. You'll have a lot of free time. I mean, you know, I'm trying to think if I know any verses in chapter 8 or 9 or 10. I don't know. Nothing's really coming to mind. Chapter 8 sounds familiar, though. Mm-hmm. Maybe chapter 10, too. Okay, so I just want to see what I wanted to make sure. Okay, so it's just a real quick reminder of a couple of things on the schedule. Some of you were not in here this morning, and I'm trying to get that in the right place. That's better. Okay, so just some quick changes to the schedule, just to remind you. So today we have couples class starting at 2 o'clock. All right, so we have the couples class starting at 2 o'clock. It will flow straight into the Up to the Challenge class right after that. And so we may actually flow and keep the couples class going a little longer. We'll see how that goes. We also have Curtis Reed teaching tonight, as well as tomorrow night, so that'll be great. And the Gadol class kids, those of you with the Gadol class children, okay, we will be working with them during the time that Curtis is teaching. Okay, so I got to figure out where we're going to meet with them. We can try to see if we can do this in the lobby of the BRC, of the Blue Ridge Center. I think we should find enough couches and ways to work something out so we could sit there, or we'll have to go to somewhere else. But we will have you guys in here with Curtis. Okay, so at least we'll start out in the lobby of the Blue Ridge Center. We can always go somewhere else. Also, a reminder that we have made a few other changes where it says Up to the Challenge for Friday and for Sunday. Okay, so the Friday slot at 2 o'clock is now going to be Pidyon Haben. So those of you who want to do the Pidyon Haben, the Redeeming of the Firstborn, or at least want to learn about it, you can come for that. That'll run at about 2 o'clock for about 15, 20, 30 minutes. And then after that, we will be doing prayer for those who need healing. Okay, so those who have things to be prayed over, you can come at 2:30, and we'll do that from 2:30 to about 3 or so. And then I've got counseling sessions going the rest of the day with slots to be filled for that. And then on Sunday, the 2 o'clock session also will be a counseling session. We're turning that session into counseling at 2 o'clock until the 4 o'clock session, which was a dance class, is being canceled. And we're going to put the Midrash from the evening in the 4 o'clock spot and turn the evening spot into a Torah portion readings of Bereshit. Yay! Yay. So those of you that are used to doing this on Adobe Connect, we'll be doing it live right here. That'll be really cool. So we'll do exactly the kind of thing we do on Adobe Connect, but we're doing it live here. We will try to broadcast it. We have not yet figured out, well, we will be announcing it between now and Sunday, you know, what the best way to do it technology-wise is, whether we use Adobe Connect from here and broadcast or through a YouTube video like we do now, the YouTube live streaming, okay? So we'll try. So for those of you on the live stream, we will announce it for you guys as soon as we can get it worked out. Let me see what else is on here. Okay, the only other thing also, don't forget we have movie night Saturday night, and it's going to be in here. And then I think we made arrangements that they'll have their popcorn machines in here, so we can have some popcorn and stuff going on and some drinks. So we'll have that. For those of you that still have balances, okay, we're going to make sure to get that worked out. Some of you have balances, but you don't have balances. In other words, we think you do, but you don't think you do, and you're probably right. So don't be upset with us. I never claimed to be an accountant. I claimed to be a rabbi. So, okay. It's not even the accounting part. It's just the fact that there's all this paperwork that comes in, and checks come in at different times. And some of you have sent 5 different checks as you pay for it, little by little, and those kind of things. So it's easy that I could have missed something, especially if you sent it in and didn't write the word Sukkot on it anywhere. Then we put it in the general fund thinking it was just an offering or donation or a tithe because you didn't say what it was. Okay, especially those of you that do send your tithes on a regular basis. It could have easily gotten mixed in. So I will start with the default that it's probably my fault. But just come and sit with us, let us figure it out, let us find the check, because we can look it up in our banking and see where it was, and we can mark it off and get it all cleared up. But if you do owe a balance, please make sure that we get that cleared up. David and Sameach, you should have a list of that so we can put that together and so we can get that done. Okay? So stand up, you two. So mostly you're going to be working with them, and if it's something that we need to clear up, then you'll be sent over to me and we'll get it looked up. Okay? But if you know you have a balance and you just need to meet with them and you haven't gotten to pay yet, please get together with them and get checked in, and we'll get that worked out. Okay. Aren't they doing a great job with helping with all that? So very quickly after Sukkot, when we put out the information for Passover, we probably will have new event coordinators helping do that whole thing all the way through. And that's exciting. All right, so I think that's going to cover it for the announcements. So let's go ahead and look at this section of Scripture from chapter 8 through 14 here. Excuse me. All right. So the way we do this again is that we have Dawid walking around with a mic and Dale with a mic, and we're going to try to get as many of you in as we can between now and lunch. Okay, so we have about 2 hours, so that's not bad. That should give us a good amount of time to cover some stuff. And so just go ahead and raise your hand. If you're on the live stream, we got Kurt monitoring the live stream. And so on the live stream, we'll be able to do that as well. All right, Janet, go ahead and get us started.
Yes, Rabbi, chapter 11. I love this portion where it says, and you should lay up these words of mine in your heart and in your being. And then it says, and you shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And then later, if you keep reading verse 20, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates.
Okay, that's chapter 6, right?
Chapter
11. Chapter 11, right?
Yes.
So they repeated it. There you go.
So I got that part where it says, write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. I thought that was related to the, the what? Yeah, the mezuzah. But what about the other sign on your hand and frontlets between your eyes?
Oh, you didn't hear that we're doing the tattoo session at... Hold on, let me see on the schedule. Don't forget before your eyes, too. We got... It's like a permanent makeup thing, you know? I've only had 3 hours of sleep. What do you expect? Okay. So... understand that everything in that section of Deuteronomy 6 and Deuteronomy 11 that talks about the binding as a sign on your hands and putting it before your eyes and putting it on the doorposts of your house and gates is not necessarily literal. Okay? It's not literal. That doesn't mean you can't do something literally. So in a sense of being maximalist, our Jewish brothers do these things literally. And so they have a thing called a mezuzah, okay, which they have as a little box that they have in it the words of Deuteronomy that says that these things should be as a sign, okay, and they should be written on your doorposts and gates. So they have them in a little scroll that's written in real small print in Hebrew, and it's put in this little box, and then it's put on the doorposts. And they'll put it on actually the frames of the doors in all the rooms of their house, and so they'll have them everywhere they go. And by the way, if you ever see that there and you see somebody doing this thing with their lips and their fingers, the proper way to be doing that is not idolizing it and kissing it. So we don't go like that. What you're doing is they're supposed to be, of course, people imitate each other not knowing what they're doing, is showing their desire to have that on their lips. So you touch it and bring it to your mouth. Okay? Otherwise, it would be more like an idolish sort of weird thing. But you touch the mezuzah and then your mouth or your lips. Okay? It's not a kiss thing, you're just bringing it to your lips. Same thing like if we had a Torah scroll and we were to walk it through the congregation, you would touch the scroll and then touch your lips. I explained this at one congregation in like 2000 that I was working with, or 99 maybe actually, and we had a Torah scroll that became available. I said, let's have a Torah service, and we walked the Torah, and I explained to them, I said, look, we are not worshiping the scroll. But a tradition is to touch it and then bring it to your mouth. And still people, like, even though I said that really clearly like 5 times, said, well, I didn't like that whole kissing the Torah thing. Apparently not all of the eyes and ears had been opened. There's a little clog going on still in there. Okay, so as a literal thing, the Jewish community also uses something called tefillin. Okay, tefillin, you may see the word phylacteries. I wondered, what is that, like a type of dinosaur? Phylactery, pterodactyl, I don't know. I mean, what are these things? Okay, phylacteries or the tefillin, so they have a box, again, with scripture in it, and they will put it on their arm, and they'll bind it, because it says they'll bind it as a sign. They'll bind it with a leather cord on their arm, and let me tell you something. When you're a Jew, and you do tefillin, and it's the first time you've done it, it leaves marks. I mean, they bind it on your arm. Not permanent, but you know, like if you've had something on too tight and you finally take it off, you get that little red mark. They wind it on there pretty good and tight. And they also have a box that sits just above your eyes with a leather cord. So it sits, and that doesn't sit so tightly, but they sit that there. And they'll do that with certain prayers, and they'll do that on a daily basis. They'll put on the tefillin. They'll calling binding tefillin. Okay, so again, that's their understanding of doing it in the mechanical way, doing the actual physical manifestation of those commandments. On the other hand, let's understand what it's really talking about. What's it talking about? How we think. Let it be in front of your eyes, like, so it's in the forefront of your mind. How we do things, what are we doing? The works of the hands, the things that we do. And that your house and your property should be known as a place of Torah observance. Okay? Does it make sense? Because you ever do something and people look at you and say, uh-oh, it's written all over your face. They'll say that phrase, right? That something is written all over your face. Because you'll come over, you're all upset, and they said, yeah, I knew that. I could see it's written all over your face. Well, it should be written all over your house. When people see your house, they should know your house and what goes on there is a house of Torah, a house of Yahweh. Okay? Does that answer your question? Okay. So should you do the mezuzah and the other things? You're certainly welcome to. But let's remember again this idea of tradition versus Torah, okay? Tradition, and this is a good point that we can just make real quick, and we've said it a lot of times, so maybe some of you haven't heard this. Tradition is wonderful, fabulous, awesome, great to help bring some of the flavor and understanding of what you're doing, as long as you don't do one of 2 things. As long as your tradition does not elevate to be equal to Torah, or elevate above and be used to override Torah, get in the way of Torah. Nowhere in Scripture does Yeshua have a problem with tradition, or Paul even. Paul says, keep the traditions I've taught you. The problem is when Torah and tradition are blurred. And in the Jewish community, this is a huge problem. Okay, a huge problem. My father would ask me from time to time, after talking to some of his friends, they'd come back and say, well, they mentioned something, blah, 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 blah. Is that Torah or is that tradition? And the way he would word it is Torah is a Talmud. Okay, is it a tradition or is it Torah? And I give you an example. I'm walking around New York. My Jewish friends will see me, or some people I meet that are Jewish will say, I see the seat. So seat, no kippah. What's going on? And I go, Torah, Talmud. And they go, oh, okay, So is it wrong to wear the kippah? No. Do you have to? No. Would it be wrong to put a mezuzah on your house? No. Do you have to? No. Does it make sense? You understanding? Now, some of you are going to get hung up just like the rabbis did and go, well, how do you put it on the doorpost? Do you put it this way? Do you put it this way? Do you ever notice that the ones in a house are on an angle? Do you know what that is? That was their compromise. Don't laugh. That's really what happened. Do we stand it this way? Do we stand it this way? Okay, we put it this way. Tradition. All right, who's next? Okay, in the back. Okay, and again, just as we go to that question, please embrace and enjoy some of your traditions. Don't make them Torah. Some of you know I've done this in your house, because some of you are so strict about praying before you eat That's a Christian Talmud, by the way. It's nowhere in Scripture that you're commanded to pray before you eat. And I'll stand there around the table like everybody else is. I know they're waiting for the prayer, and I'll reach over and grab something and start to eat it. And the kid will look up and be like, oh, if I did that, I'd get smacked. And I'll look at them like and say, caught you. You're treating a tradition like it's Torah. Now, if you smack the kid because, and again, I'm not for smacking anybody, but if you correct the child because they're not submitting to your tradition and say, in our family, this is what we do, that's okay. You want to correct them, but make sure they understand that they're not in trouble with Yahweh just because they didn't pray before the meal. Okay, but your family has a tradition. Traditions are good. They deepen relationships. They deepen a community as a culture when you have group traditions. Just be careful you don't elevate them so that they're somehow commanded on high when he didn't say it. Okay, Lisa.
Okay. I'm reading from Deuteronomy 1:3. It says, and you shall know today that Yahweh your Elohim is he who is passing over you before you as a consuming fire. He does destroy them and subdue them before you. So you shall dispossess them and destroy them quickly, as Yahweh has said to you. And I just put together that he says he does destroy them and it subdues them before you. But then he says, right after that, so you shall dispossess them and destroy them quickly. And it just is saying, you know, that he's doing the work, or he's telling them he's going to do it, but then in the same sense he's saying, now go do it. And so it's, I think he does this with us, is that he tells us he's going to do it, and he's going to strengthen us to do it. And then, but he tells us we need to first walk in it, I think, and take the action in belief.
Absolutely. Well, look, remember that this is one of those things where we have an opportunity to talk about context, context, context. The people already knew that there were promises, that covenant had promises. One of the promises was about what? If you go into some place, I will go before you, and one of you will chase away so many of them, or 100 of you will chase away so many of them. So he didn't say, I will go before you, wipe them all out, and then you can come in. So they had an understanding of this. You still have to go in. That's why the spies got so much trouble, right? Because they went and looked at the land and didn't trust the promise that said, if you go in, I will be there in front, and it will not be a problem. But you still have to go in. And I'm going to use you, as we talked about the other day, as a sword. And so, in any other place, in any other writing, do we ever see any documentation of a people going into battle, a huge battle, not like 1, 3 people, 5 people, but hundreds, even thousands and thousands of people, where nobody on one side died and everybody on the other side died? But you see that here, because he goes before them. But they still go and do the fighting. Okay? So when he says he fights for you and protects you, it's because he's involved in making sure you win, they lose. You survive, they don't. But you're not just walking through. You have a sword and you're doing your battle, which is what you have to do in your own life. You still have to fight the fight. But knowing that really you're fighting the fight, but he's really in front fighting the fight. So, Lisa, was that good? Did that help? Okay, good. Okay, next person. Okay, live stream, Kurt.
All right, so Nick Goddard. His question is in Deuteronomy 8:16, is the manner our fathers did not know a remnants of Yeshua? And if so, this links to direct application to us, or is there more to it?
Okay, ask the question again. I mean, I'm looking at the verse. Okay, the question is?
8:16, so is the manna our fathers did not know a remnants of Yeshua? And if so, this links to direct application to us, or is there more to it?
Okay, so the remez is the part I missed, the remez. Okay, from Peshat, remez, drash, and so. That's, I think, the person was asking, right? Okay, yes. Remez. Okay, remez meaning a hinted at thing. Yes and no. I mean, because we see Yeshua and others in the Brit using these kind of terms, and Yeshua used this term when he was trying to describe himself, when he said, I am the bread of life. He said, your fathers ate manna in the desert. But the idea of saying your fathers ate manna, which they did not know, well, first of all, do you know what manna means? means, what's this? They didn't know what it was. It was something they'd never seen before. This is a whole different type of sustenance and food that would show up. And they were fed with this, and it kept them nourished, and it supplied them with all their needs. And so he's trying to use this as part of the miracles and the experience, really, is what's going on here in this chapter. He's saying, look, in Deuteronomy 8, in this section, this is also known as where the Birkat HaMazon comes from, the blessing after the meal. You know what I say every meal when we go, have you eaten and are you satisfied? Okay, just remember that it talks about that here in this section when it says in verse 12, lest you eat and you shall be satisfied and do all these things and forget. But you shall remember, verse 18, that Yahweh is the one that does all these things. But then he reminds you that, yes, you have all these things, but don't forget, he's the one that did this stuff. He brought the water out of the flinty rock. He fed you with food that, it's not like he just fed them when all of a sudden there was, normal things like leeks. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm obsessed. I'm just obsessed with the leeks thing. No, but it wasn't normal things like vegetables or animal. Now, of course, they did get the quail eventually, but it sounds to me like they kind of had a problem digesting it a little bit, nose coming out of it. Anyway, they were choking on the quail. But he gave them something miraculous. And that's why it's here in Deuteronomy 8. Now, because Yeshua quotes this, yes, there's connection there. Okay, yes, there's definitely a connection there. But realize the Peshat, before we get to the Remez, does everybody know what Peshat, Remez, Drash, and Sod is? Well, how many people don't know? Oh, good. How would you like me to explain? Okay, forget it. I'm not doing it. Okay, so I don't have time. Okay, so in the Jewish community, as they've studied Scripture for years and years, and by the way, before you get too haughty and full of yourself and think that your Jewish brothers are such idiots, they have studied on levels that you can't even imagine. What I mean is the way that they've studied that word, and for centuries, actually for thousands of years. And you think because you came to Torah observance in the last 5 or 10 years, you've studied better than they have. No. The only difference between you and them is that he's revealed something to you he hasn't revealed to them. But don't think you're smarter or that you study better. I mean, they have sections and groups of their community that do nothing but study the word and break it down all day, every day, and that's all they do for centuries and millennia. And so as they did it, they recognized that in their perception of Scripture that it was written with certain structural things, like it was written with certain formats. And so when it was written, they believe it was written on 4 levels at least, and some of the other ones have thought maybe more than that, but 4 basic levels. And the 4 levels are called Peshat, Remez, Drash, and Sod. Okay, it has an acronym that you may hear called PARDES. PARDES. Okay, Peshat, so you got P-R-D and then S or for the Sod. So you have Peshat, Remez, Drash, Sod. So Peshat is the simple, straightforward understanding. The literal. You see Yeshua doing this. Where do you see Yeshua doing a Peshat versus Remez? David.
5:17, Matthew.
In Matthew, exactly. Okay. Well, not so much 5:17. Further on the chapter. Okay. Matthew 5, where he starts off, where I didn't come to destroy, but to fulfill. And he goes, well, you heard of old in the Peshat not to commit adultery. Right. The Peshat is that I literally should not sleep with her. And he's saying, well, it also hints that there's deeper levels to this. You shouldn't even be thinking about it. That would be more of a remez or a deeper level, a hint at that level. Okay, so yes, you can't walk around just saying, well, what are you looking at me for? I didn't do it. Well, no, okay, you didn't do it, but you wanted to. Same thing he says with murder. Well, I heard you about not to murder. He said, but you want to. Oh, you hating, wanting to. Oh, you'd be happy to find out they got killed. And he's saying, that's a deeper level. So Peshat is the simple, straightforward, basic understanding. So if we were to look at that here, okay, in the verse we were looking at with the binding as a sign, well, on a very simple level, you would literally be doing that. But you'd have to look deeper to see if that's really what we're talking about here. It's really hinting at how you think, how you do, how your house is. So that's Remez. The drash is the allegorical, like the story and the message that's there. And of course, the sod is the hidden, which is funny how all of us in our sort of unrepented Gnostic ways We love that deep stuff. That's all we want to know is that hidden stuff. So rather than figure out the first 3 levels, we want to spend all our time figuring out the 4th level. Well, you know what? The 4th level doesn't make any sense if you don't understand the other 3. And there's a rule, by the way, which a lot of the newcomers into this, and I don't want to just call you former Gentiles or whatever, but those of you that come into this, there's a rule that you don't understand and that you maybe never heard, which is that you are not allowed to take it to a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th level to the point where it no longer looks like the 1st. Okay? If it's so deep and extraneous, etc., that you can't even recognize it as the Peshat, you've gone too far. You've definitely gone off the tracks. Okay, so now you've learned part of traditional Hebraic study is to look for the 4 levels. And they're not all 4 in every verse, but you can see those things play out in the verses. Did that help a little bit? Okay, and so we've actually seen it today because the first question was actually about, is it Peshat or is it Remez? Is it Peshat, then I need to put something on my doorpost and I need to worry about what I'm putting on my hand. If it's Remez, I need to know what it's hinting at. What is it really talking about? Okay? And actually this question was, is this manna about the actual manna they had in the wilderness, or is it hinting at and pointing towards? That's why they asked if it was a Remez. Is it pointing towards Yeshua? The answer is yes. It also was literal in this case. It was talking about this literal thing that was a miracle. Excellent question. It was a great opportunity to give that little sidebar. Okay, what else we got? Where's the mic? Okay, Robert?
All right, I was something I just noticed this morning, in 9:12, and it says, Yahweh said to me, arise, go down quickly from here, for your people, whom you brought out of Mitzrayim, have acted corruptly. They have quickly turned aside from the way which I commanded them, and they have made themselves a molded image. And yet you go back to just back to 5, and that when they're redoing the 10 commandment or the 10 words, it says, I am Yahweh who brought you out of Mitzrayim. But here, now he's saying, Moshe, this is the people that you brought out.
Amen. Well, the reason you didn't see that before is because it wasn't there. It's the Mandela effect. It just wasn't there before. And no, you know what this is like? This is like parenting, right? Where all of a sudden, when something goes bad, well, do you know what your daughter did? My daughter? Did I make this one by myself? Do you know what your son did this morning? Your son. Our son? No, my son. I didn't know I had one without you. What are you talking about? That's kind of what's going on here. But also it's Yahweh showing this is important now. This is important now. When he works with, well, first of all, does he work with human interfaces? Yes. Does he put them in positions of leadership? Yes. Some of us just don't understand that if you're in that position, you get the blame. Which is why you don't want the job. So Moses had the job. So Yahweh said, your people, now remember, he's not saying this because everything was going great. It's because they acted corruptly. So now they became his people. When they're behaving, they're my people. They're going off the deep end, they're your people. Now, if they want to be my people, they got to teshuvah and get back on the track. That's a lesson to all of us. When we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, we're not his people. What is the covenant? If you obey my commands, diligently guard them, etc., I accept you as my people. That's Exodus 19. That's part of the whole covenant teaching we're doing. But you got to love, this is, we still do this today. This is like the parent thing. Oh, I, Yahweh, took them out of Egypt. I rescued them. I brought them out. But then they did this corruption thing. So your people who made that calf, I'm still not happy with that. Okay, they've quickly turned aside from the way which I commanded them. I commanded your people. That also gives you a hierarchy. See, some of the people walk around thinking that somehow Moses was full of himself and being in charge and everything else. He says, no, I commanded them, but somehow they dropped the ball and I'm holding you responsible. That's why Moses had to stand before Yahweh and say, don't kill them, kill me. And he fell on his face before them. Because I'm the leader, I take responsibility. And let me tell you something, that's a hard thing for the leadership, because guess what? We try to lead, and a lot of you don't listen. And you don't follow. And we get really frustrated, not because we're control freaks, but because we're responsible. And so it's a hard balance for us to know how hard to push, because I'm going to be held account. You know, there are verses that talk about the teacher, the leader, having a double responsibility. There's a double judgment. And yet, oh, you guys love to jump on Facebook and answer people's questions and stand up and tell them they're wrong about this and that this is what they're supposed to do, and stop doing that. Really? And what if you're wrong? Do you really want that job? Do you want, because some of you think this is like a big glorified thing. Hey, it's great. You know, he gets to be up in there and people think he's all wonderful and he does these teachings and he doesn't have to go to work every day. Really? You want to come see the 16-hour day I do? I work 12 to 4. Oh, that's 4 hours. No, that's not 4 hours. That's 16 hours. Okay, 12 noon to 4 a.m. almost every night, including last night. I was in here working until 3:40 or so. Do you want that job? Be careful, because every time you do that, you're acting like you want that job. It's amazing to me. There have been times where I've approved a post on our Facebook page, and I approve it, and right away I'm typing the answer, and another answer will pop up faster than I can type. I'm like, are you kidding me? Why do you think you need to answer the questions? There's leadership in the room. You shouldn't be, I've been in groups of people where something will come up and somebody will jump right in there, and I'm standing right there, or Rabbi Tom or some other leader. I'm like, what? Why would you do that? There's leadership in the room. See, in other organizations, they understand this. In the military, if a higher ranking's in the room, are you jumping in there and saying anything, military guys? No way. Would it go well if you did? No way. But I don't understand that. Why put yourself at risk like that? Okay, when I wasn't ever in the military, but I was in the martial arts. I'll tell you what, when my teacher was in the room, nobody else was talking. Not unless he told us we should. Not unless he asked you a question or wanted to know, see what we understood about something. But man, we in the body just want to show everybody, impress everybody how smart we are, or we want to set them straight because we somehow think it's our responsibility to fix everybody and prevent all the problems. You know what? You got enough of your own. Anybody have your own problems all worked out? No hands, really? Then why are you thinking you have time to fix anybody else's? I wouldn't make any effort at all to fix anybody else's problems, except for that's my job. So I don't have a choice. Trust me, I don't want to do it. It's my least favorite part of my job, but that's kind of what I have to do. I don't know why anybody would go and do it if they didn't have to. But yet, this is what we're reading about here, because this is the way Yahweh will look at you. Let's say you talk to somebody and you talk them into it and you try to and then they end up in the wrong place. Yahweh will look at you and say, your friend who you did this with, instead of saying, my son, my daughter, you're going to now be responsible for what you did. We are just messing around with things that are dangerous and have no idea what we're messing with. We're supposed to, anybody remember Philippians 2:12? What's it say in Philippians 2:12? We need to walk out everybody else's salvation. Is there any linkage to you and anybody but you in that verse? None. I mean, Paul made it very clear, and I agree 100% with him. We are responsible to walk out our own salvation, and in doing so, we might be a light to some people, but the burden of responsibility on what they're doing is not yours. Now, there are things that say, like, bear one another's burdens, but that's an agreed-upon relationship. If you and I have a relationship where we've agreed to share and bear each other's burdens, that's great. But most of you don't know anybody in the faceless place called Facebook. I mean, you've met them online, and you've maybe not even had a phone call, maybe never a face-to-face, but after all, now that you're like your best friend, you don't know them. And you're going to take counsel from them? I don't know how many times I've had to counsel somebody, and they told me, well, so-and-so said this, and so-and-so said that. And I'm like, why are you listening? Who is this so-and-so? Do you know how much they really care about you? Do you have any idea what their background is and how much they actually have studied and are trained and to do this counseling? Are they anointed and appointed to do it? Why are you listening to them? And then you come to me and you're already screwed up because you listened to too many of them. And you've gone down those paths and realized, you know what, I probably shouldn't have done that. Why do you do that? And then you won't call me when you should because, or me or whatever the leadership is. When I say me, I'm talking about whoever's in that leadership position. Because they're too busy or this or that or whatever. Or because, you know what, you know if you call them, now you've got to do, if you don't, even if you don't like it, whatever they tell you to do. And so you avoid that. So you go and you find somebody else to listen to because you might like what they have to say better. And if you don't, who cares? So you don't have to do it. That's a problem. That's a problem. All right, next question. All right, Beverly, go ahead.
Shalom.
Shalom.
2 comments, questions to some statements that you made. First one is you made the comment about how Abba says your people, and then it made me think of Adam and Eve when Adam said, the woman you gave me. The second thought, and this is more of a question, when you were stating that he went, Abba went before the people, and you made a comment that did anyone die or something to that effect. But my question is, because I'm trying to tie it into today, even though there are times where to do certain things, there is sometimes casualty of war. So I was thinking that was the same then. So is that not true? Did that make sense? I hope.
Okay. Well, you had a couple of questions there. Let me answer the last one first, which is yes, there were times they went to war and people died, but also they've had battles where nobody died, just to show how miraculous they could be. Okay. So they weren't always protected where they didn't have any casualties. But as far as the first part is, let's remember that we're not going to say that somehow Adam was acting the same as Yahweh or vice versa. Adam was excusing what happened. Oh no, it's not my fault. It's the woman. She did it. And of course, she turned around immediately and said, oh, no, I was deceived. And everybody was passing the buck. What Yahweh was saying is, just so you know, this was your responsibility. That was your people. They were your responsibility. Because he was about to have to take care of them for another 40 years. Because remember, this is happening right at the beginning at Sinai. You know, the people that did the golden calf. And so there's a lot of testing of Moses going on in the beginning. And that's what he's explaining here. Just like there's that really powerful verse in the beginning of Deuteronomy where he says that let's make sure where it was. Trying to think if we already got to it or maybe it's in a later chapter. But when he talks about how Yahweh, wasn't going to let me get into the land. And he said, so I went and argued with him a little bit, and he said, no. He said, Yahweh did not let me go for your sake. Because if he would let me go, he would have undermined the whole idea of consequences, and Yahweh never doesn't change and all that kind of stuff. So he's also showing for everybody's sake here that they could read this one day and realize if you're ever in this leadership thing, and you've got a group of people, you're responsible. Which is really horrible because you really have no control. So it's horrible to have responsibility and no control. Some of you parents know what that's like once you got teenagers and older. You got all this responsibility and no control. Because they don't listen and you can't make them listen. But you're responsible. And so we all get to know what this feels like. Yahweh feels that way too. He's completely responsible for all of us, but he's chosen to not have control over us. He's given us free will. I'm sure that's frustrating as whatever. I mean, that's just frustrating. To watch your children do the things that you know are going to hurt them and are foolish and are not productive. Okay? So when we compare it to what happened with Adam, it's a great comparison, but you see one was a passing off and shifting and blaming. Yahweh's not shifting blame here. He's saying, just so we're clear, you were the leader, you were responsible. Okay? Yes, I brought this people out, but then I gave them to you to lead. I led you, you led them. That's the way this works. And by the way, he could have said, and basically did say the same thing to Adam. No, you were in charge. You were responsible for her. Okay? Okay, where's the mic? Daweed?
I just wanted to bring to the fore some of my own experiences before I got to MTOI. When I was, some people may know, some people may not, but I did spend like 5 years in Israel and gained a lot of knowledge, but one of the things about knowledge is it puffs up. So you think you're more than you actually are. And I had never actually been actively discipled by somebody who was a believer in Yeshua and also Torah observant. So, fresh from Israel, I was talking to one of my friends about my experiences in Israel and things like that. And, you know, I didn't mention any of the stuff that you have to watch out for. I didn't mention any of the stuff. I didn't mention the fact that I was with my mother and my sister there, so I wasn't necessarily alone. And this guy took the little bit that I told him, decided to go off to Israel, and ended up that he got a girl pregnant. She ended up having an abortion, and he felt terrible for the rest of his life. And I still look at myself as I should not have made it look like it was so easy to necessarily go to Israel, and especially alone. And so that's on me to a certain extent, because I basically was talking to him and advising him and all this and that and the other, and I had no business doing it, and I didn't even know it.
All right, now I want to be cautious with what he just said, because sometimes we are responsible, sometimes we're not, and we have to be careful with that. And so I think there are some aspects of that that are completely not your responsibility, and some maybe be a little bit. I don't know exactly all the details. But some of you, when I counsel you, I know you're owning stuff you shouldn't, and you're not owning the stuff you should. And how do you know the difference? You make a phone call. Okay, and you talk to somebody that can help you sort it out. So I appreciate that he made that comment, because it gave me the opportunity to say that, which is there's probably some parts of that, and some of you came to that conclusion also that, well, maybe some of that really wasn't, you know, on you, but some of it was. I don't know what parts, because I don't know all the story, but that's where you need counsel to sort through, because some of you are owning a tremendous amount, and I don't want you to raise your hands, but anybody out there feeling guilty about things you've done in your life, have a burden of guilt that you are struggling to let go of? Well, maybe you need someone to help you walk through that guilt and sort through that maybe some of that is not really something you need to own. You were connected with something or somebody, and they made choices, but somehow you've taken the blame. And possibly because they told you it was your fault. You made me do this. You did this to me. If you had been there, I wouldn't have done that. Or because you were there, I did do this. Or they pointed that finger at you and you owned it. Now, maybe you did deserve to own it. Maybe you didn't. You need help with that. Okay? Because I think a lot of the body is really, quite frankly, very messed up because of that guilt thing. Stuff, especially not letting it go. And even if you were guilty, there's a process of repentance and etc. teshuvah, where again, at that point, you still let it go. You can't hold on to that stuff. It eats you alive. And it destroys all your future relationships. Listen, can we all admit we're all stupid and have made mistakes? And some of those mistakes have hurt other people or caused them to stumble. Okay, so guess what? We're all guilty. This tells you we're all guilty. Doesn't it? None of us gets through this without having made a mistake and sinned and everything else. But we're supposed to be on the journey trying to figure out how to avoid it, correct it, not do it anymore, and all those kind of things. Learn the lessons and grow. And so that's the need for counsel. And it doesn't have to be with me necessarily. We got other people in the leadership you could counsel with. But you need help sorting these things through from somebody who knows how to sort them through. Amen? All right, next. Okay, David?
Yeah, first of all, the verse that you were looking for before was 3:26 in Deuteronomy, enraged for your sake. Right. And then in 13:6, it's a verse that made me smile. It's an important verse in terms of the process of those who entice us secretly and saying, let us go and serve other mighty ones. But it made me smile because I know in your teachings you say, your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, your boss, your best friend, and it kind of just says that right there in verse 6. It just names everybody. Brother, son of mother, son or daughter, wife, everybody. But I know that the importance of that, which you talk about, that anybody, if we're not guarding ourselves, we can be susceptible to that influence.
Yeah, and you know, I've talked about this phrase, sniopt. I mean, most of us have a problem with this, which is susceptibility to the negative influences of other people. Okay, it's just an acronym, but you don't want to be sniopt. You don't want to be, and a lot of you are. You're so ready, and mostly because either you have a problem with your own self-esteem, so the negative influences is where you start to feel bad about you. Okay, a lot of you are negatively influenced about yourself. And the flip side of that is that you allow people to negatively influence you about other people. Equally damaging. Actually, the first one's much worse. I can help fix you the second one easier than the first one. Because some of you are very reluctant to let go of what other people have spoken into your life that you readily accepted. And so you have a hard time believing you're not that person that everybody's told you you are. And so that's the negative influences of other people. You know, I used the Matrix example where at the very end of the movie, Neo's there and they're shooting bullets at him. And I really feel it's not so much that he actually stopped them, he just didn't accept them. He just looked at them and says, no, I'm not accepting those bullets. And so they stopped. You don't have to accept the stuff being thrown at you. You could just say, well, that's how you feel, that's fine, but I'm not accepting that. I don't have to receive that. Not at all. And I don't mean in that Christianese idea like when a person said, you know, something like, well, it sounds like you have the flu. Oh, no, I'm not receiving that. Stop with the name it, claim it stuff and thinking it even like you can't say anything because after all, then spontaneously you're going to have whatever it is. Otherwise, I'm going to say spontaneously, there's peace on earth or some other thing, and there it should be, right? It doesn't work that way. But don't receive the stuff people say to you about you, and when they're trying to tell you, well, you know you're just no good, and you know you've always been rotten, and you know that you don't care about people, and you know that you'll never amount to anything, and you know you're a lazy. See, that's what I'm talking about. Don't own that stuff. And by the way, you know who says that most? You. That voice in your head is saying all those lousy, you would never let anybody talk to you the way you talk to yourself. Never. Well, I'm just no good. Look at me, everything I do. Stop that. You're your own worst enemy. Let's stop doing that. All right, who's next? Okay, in the back. I can't see. Is that Shira? Okay, good. You need to stand up, Shira.
I'm trying to pull myself together here.
There you go.
I have on my heart a question about in chapter 9 when Moshe broke the tablets. And the thought that goes through my mind is that I think I've heard you talk about this, Rabbi, that he was horrified. They had broken the covenant, and he just was dashing those tablets and just saying, it's all over. You know, he was just angry, and you blew it, you guys. And how amazingly Yahweh said, go cut out another set of tablets, and made a fresh set of tablets. And I thought about in my personal life, and sometimes collectively as a community as well, perhaps there are times when we just say, I've blown it, or this community has blown it, or somebody in leadership, you know, has done something that I just can't wrap my, heart around and handle. But I think sometimes we become horrified when our flesh is exposed. Sometimes we feel like giving up. And it just impressed me the amazing mercy and compassion of Yahweh, his long suffering, that he would have him do it again, just make him again. And then he had the people who disobeyed drink the ground up gold powder. And I think of in my own life how many times, Father, I've just kind of waffled and waffled. Pardon me, Steve Waffle, I didn't mean to. But I've done a little dance, you know.
We can never use that word the same again.
We will never.
He was upset that they had pancakes today and they didn't have any waffles. He
no
took
maple syrup.
Took that permanently. took that personally.
But anyway, you know, sometimes Father has just allowed me, all right, you want that thing that's getting in your way and you can't grow? I'm just going to stuff you with it until you vomit. And so I wondered if you'd like to comment on what I've just shared with regard to our own walk, the symbolism of what went on there, and also why did the second time Yahweh made Moshe go out and find sapphire stones and hew them himself? Could you explain the significance of that?
Okay, so, well, first of all, you've got a lot of tremendous metaphors in this whole thing, because it actually is something we're talking about in the covenant teaching, is that we're looking towards a renewal of covenant. Well, there was a Sinai covenant, which was renewed actually at Sinai, because after all, they broke it almost immediately, and he had to make new tablets. So the renewal of the covenant, by the way, we're in the renewed covenant is what we're looking for, because they've been breaking it a few times. And so that's great to know that there's compassion and mercy, because it says an El compassionate, we talked about. Okay, abundant in kindness and mercy. And so that compassion and that mercy is why he said, okay, we handled the golden calf thing, we dealt with it, it's over, we're now going to start again. Okay, let's do a do-over, we're going to do a new start. Let's go get some stones, and let's go get this going. Now, as far as Moses, that could be actually a part of this idea of taking responsibility. Okay, maybe I did too much for you the first time. Let's get you more involved. Okay, you're going to cut these out. You're going to do this work. Does that make sense then? Okay? And so you'll take more ownership of it. To recognize, not that the people doing what they did was really Moses' fault, but he's just making, again, an example and a metaphor of the process. Okay, and that's why Moses was really hard on them a lot, because after all, he was going to be held accountable. Some of you don't like the way I handle you because I'm pretty hard on you sometimes. Well, I'm going to be responsible for what I say. And by the way, this is why I've said many, many times, when you come to get counsel, don't come looking for just an opinion or an opinion poll. Because whatever I give you to do or not do, if I give you anything, I may just tell you I don't know what to do and just tell you, you're on your own with that kind of thing. Because some areas I don't have expertise in, that's fine. But if I give you counsel, that's because I take responsibility for whether that will work or not. I'm not just giving you like, hey, go try that. Now, it may be a case where I really don't know, and I may say to you, I'm not really sure what to do here. You might want to give this a try. That's different. But if I give you counsel saying, listen, you really need to stop doing this or do this thing and that, and you take, that's Deuteronomy 17 now. Now you're listening to counsel and you're getting that counsel. If you don't do what's told, then you're acting arrogantly and you're bringing yourself all kinds of problems. Not because the person you went to is guaranteed to be right and so smart, but because that's the process. And in that process, he honors the process. As long as that leader is taking it that seriously and cares that much to make sure they're doing the best to give you the right answers. But you also want to have a leadership that doesn't have a problem saying, I don't know. And you've all heard me say, I don't know. Because it's not actually safe to be in a leadership that never says, I don't know. Because what they're doing is thinking they have to have an answer, so they make one up. Because they just think that. Have you ever been under those kind of leaderships? Okay. Although you might not have known at the time that they were making anything up. Because you just thought they had the answer. But at some point you realize they seem to always have an answer. They never say, I don't know. Now, if they're going through life and processing, they should probably have less and less I don't knows, because some of those I don't knows are, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to go try to figure them out so next time I have an answer. So over time, there should be less of those. Although you guys are really good at coming up with things I never heard of before, so then there's more of those. I had about 4 questions since I've been here going, that's the first time I've heard that. Which is cool, I guess. I mean, listen, you've been doing this for a while. There's not a whole lot you didn't hear before. So every now and then you get one of those that you haven't heard before. Those are kind of like, oh, there's still more things out there I did not expect to hear. So there's some interesting things that come up. Okay, did that answer your question, Shira? Okay. So how it applies to us today, which I think was the other part of your question, is take responsibility for what you need to take responsibility as he's showing you things. Now, here's the problem on the flip side of that. Okay, this is a danger zone. Warning, warning, Will Robinson. Okay. None of you remember that? Okay. Warning, warning, with the arms going, right? There you go. Warning, Will Robinson. Danger. Okay, here's your danger spot. Here's your danger and risk that you have to be aware of. When it comes to the understanding of taking ownership. See, Moses was to take ownership of his responsibilities for his job. Some of the problem is that some of you, most of you probably, at some point came and said, oh, there's a thing called MTOI. Oh, there's a guy, Rabbi Steve. He's got some teachings. Okay, I'll listen to some of that stuff. Check it out. Maybe show up at a feast. Check it out. And guess what? At some point, you took ownership. This is now my congregation. Not mine like you're in charge of it. Like, this is my family. This is my congregation. This is the group I'm in. I've joined. I bought into this thing. But guess what? As soon as you do, it's like a marriage. Now you want to change everything. That's my husband. Okay, now we're going to get to work. And your girlfriend said to you, well, you know, blah, blah, blah. I said, oh, don't worry, I'll get that fixed. You know, this is really the challenge, okay? And so most of the problems that I've had with people, I say most, meaning at least more than half, have come from a lot of the times the people who have come in when they get to that critical moment where they've taken ownership, where they've decided this is my home. This is my family, and therefore I should have a say in it. And then all of a sudden they want to change how we painted the walls and what the carpet looks like. And not literally, but I mean they start getting involved in how things are done. And they want to have a voice in that. After all, it's my congregation now. I've joined. Your opinion does matter, but your opinion doesn't mean this because it's your opinion, that's what we're going to do. But just be careful of that moment when you decide this is now part of your life, meaning this group specifically, like whatever an organization is. Whether you go to another congregation, you're on the live stream, and that's where you go. At the point where you take ownership, be careful that you don't overstep your bounds. Stay in your lane, in your bounds. You know, Yahweh talks a lot when they were at Mount Sinai about boundaries. We've got to be careful of those boundaries. It doesn't mean that you don't have an opportunity to voice comments, opinions. We take questions all the time, like now. Okay? We have a general session every month where people can give comments and opinions. But just because you gave it doesn't mean that we're going to do what you said. We just may not agree. It may not be the right timing. It may not be whatever. Okay? I had a person leave the congregation way at the beginning when we started this one here in Chattanooga, after a few months, and just angry at me. He said, I lied. I said, what did I lie about? Well, you said you were going to set up church government here. And I said, I never said any such thing. I said, yes, we'll have some counsel and leadership that will be helping making the decisions. I'll make the decisions, but we'll have help. I said, well, you haven't done that yet. I said, we've only had the congregation for 3 months. I don't know you guys well enough to do that yet. No, you're just making excuses. You never intend to do it. I said, how do you not see the rational thought in that process? What is the likelihood in the first 3 months of a congregation where I did not know anybody when we started of me picking the wrong people for those positions? Pretty good, huh? But right away, that person thought because they came in, took ownership, and had told me something, they had thought that they had said, and by the way, this is a woman who then started telling everybody, I hate women. I said, what do you mean you hate women? He said, well, you don't listen. So what do you mean? He said, well, I told you. I said, when did you become in charge? I told you. Well, I told you we need a church government in here. I said, well, not a church. Knock it off. We're not putting the board into this and that and that. You know, you want to see a frustrated person, go talk to a Baptist pastor. They got no authority at all. You want to know who's really in charge, go to the leader of the elders board. Anybody know what I'm talking about? You've been there, you know what I'm saying? That pastor is, I was friends with the Baptist pastor whose building we were renting the gym on for years, and he was the most frustrated guy I ever saw. Because he really couldn't do it. They actually would announce something. He told me this happened the previous Sunday or whatever. He told me, he said, you have no idea what they did to me last week. I said, what? He said, they came up on the podium and announced a new program we're starting that Tuesday that I'd never heard of. I said, how was that possible? I said, why do you tolerate that? Stand up, take charge, and let them throw you out. Because after all, that's probably what they told you when they first came. By the way, we threw out the last 25 guys in the last 100 years, and we'll throw you out if you don't do what we want. Right? Isn't that the way it works? So you just be a good boy and do what we want you to do, and you'll be all right. So be careful of that ownership thing. And think about that. All that woman had to do is find somebody else that maybe didn't like me for whatever reason and say, oh, yeah, he does. He hates women. Go talk to all the women in the room like Shira, who I cover, and see if there's any hating women thing going on. But see, she didn't get her way, so naturally that means I hate women. But you have to talk to the ones who I work with. You know, there's a lot of ladies in this congregation that I work with a lot. Ask them how they feel about the way I treat them and honor them and respect them and care about their lives. Oh, but this woman, I didn't realize it was the man when she first asked. I thought it was a question. Hey, are you planning to put this in place? And I said, absolutely. We're going to have some leadership and structure, and there will be advice and counsel. I will still make the decisions, and we still have that today, by the way. There's very few things I decide without making sure to ask Rabbi Tom and Robert and Kurt and the rest of the leadership, and we talk about these things, or we bring it up in the meeting with all the leaders in the whole of MTY. I'm glad you applauded that. Thank you. Because this is really the way it's supposed to be. But the burden of responsibility is the way I put it, not my authority, but the burden of responsibility is that I get to make the decision because I'm responsible to have your people that's going to be said to me. Your people who I gave you in Tennessee and all these other places. So I get to make that decision because whatever decision is made, they're not going to point at everybody else in the room. Point at me. Well, I shouldn't say they, he. He's not going to point at everybody else. He's going to point at me. I made the decision. And so I make the decision with counsel. But again, she said, well, you don't listen. I don't listen. Well, I told you needed to put this in place. I said, well, who put you in charge? I don't remember you being there when I decided to plant this congregation. You showed up. I've never met you before. We just hate women. You can't win. Warning to anybody who wants this job. Know in advance that you cannot win. Just accept that reality. Okay? Anyway. I just remember the pastor that did my wedding, because it's my 20-year anniversary. Thank you very much. And I really should be somewhere off with her and not with you, but she's working her part of this deal and I'm working mine because we care about you enough to do that, okay? But the gentleman who performed our wedding, when I first was coming to leadership, you've heard the story before, most of you, but I had asked him for any kind of advice. He says, hey, I'm about to get into leadership and ministry and with a congregation, all that stuff. You've been doing this for 40 years. Any thoughts? He started laughing. No, I'm kidding. Oh, you have no idea what you're getting into. No. He said, look, ministry is one of the most fulfilling things you could be doing. You're gonna love the job. You're gonna hate it. It's gonna be a lot of heartache and tears and everything else, but it's absolutely gonna be the most fulfilling thing you can do. That's great. He said, but understand this. It would be absolutely the perfect job, absolutely perfect, if we could just figure out how to get the people out of it. And he's English, so with his English accent, he says to me, and don't let the buggers get you down. I said, great advice, thank you very much. Okay. So you guys who want to be in this job, just remember all that stuff. Don't let the buggers get you down because you can't win. Okay, didn't Moses realize that? At some point he realized they're not listening. Any of you that have ever led a group knows at some point you turn to your wife or your best friend or somebody that you were with and you go, I don't think anybody's listening. I've said it to my wife many times when I've come home after doing teachings and after some of the comments and things that were going on, I'll be like, nobody's listening. Now, I know that's not true. There are people that I catch you and I catch your eyes and I know you're listening. But it feels like that sometimes because the absurd, ridiculous, not listening responses that people have make you feel like, how is that possible after what I've been teaching nonstop and hitting so hard for so many years? Are you still doing that? Or acting like you've never heard me say it? And I'm not talking about me saying it, because when I'm saying it right out of here. You don't get a whole lot of me and not just this. Everything I'm saying is right here. And so, yeah, in the leadership, I'm sure Moses felt the same way. It's like, is anybody listening? I sent 12 to spy the land. They went through all of this stuff, and 10 come back acting like they paid. Were you not in Egypt when all this happened? Did you see the signs and wonders? Today is no different, by the way. If you're in leadership, you're going to be saying the same thing. I don't think anybody's paying attention. They're just too self-sovereign. Actually, I've come to a new conclusion. There's just too much noise in your head. And I hadn't really used that phrase until recently, because I realized that sometimes when I'm on the phone with some of you and I'm counseling, I'm really going stronger than I maybe should or something, but I realize it's because I'm pushing and punching through the noise. Because you're sitting there on the phone going blah, 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 blathering and whining and this and that and all. And I'm like, that noise has got to stop, or you can't hear me. So I've got to almost yell at you, stop, knock it off, stop, time out, hold on. Anybody heard me do that to you on the phone? Some of you, yes. Some of you in person. Because that noise has got to stop, or you can't hear. But you've been so many years with all that noise in your head that some of you are dizzy already. Anybody ready to get rid of all that noise? All right, well, let's see what we can do to work that through, because that's what's going on here. That whole thing about the leaks, I make a joke out of it, but that was noise in their head. They were scared about where they were going. They didn't know what was happening, and now they imagined it was better where they were. That's all that part of that noise. Oh, but they're so big, and they're like giants, and we're like, that fear, that doubt, that insecurity, and anxiety, that's all noise, distracting in your head. Anybody have any of those things? That's all they ever counsel, is people that are dealing with fear, doubt, insecurity, trust, loyalty issues. I mean, this is almost all the noise that's going on. And by the way, you see it in Deuteronomy. We see it in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. We see it in Paul's writings. They're dealing with people with all that noise going on. So it's no different generationally. I'm sure if any of the apostles or Moses or any of those guys were alive today, they'd see the body and go, nothing's changed. They would look at you guys that way. As a body, not individually. Some of you are sitting there going, I'm not like that. And maybe you're not. I'm talking about as a group in general. Okay? As a group in general. All right, I'm done sermonizing. I got all preachy. I don't have a soapbox, but I'm standing on the cushion anyway. But who's next? Okay? Anders?
Okay, Rabbi. To connect a little bit with what you're saying here in Deuteronomy chapter 12, in verses 2 and 3, he's talking about destroying the authority of other mighty ones. And a little bit connecting that in our walk today, and maybe we'll connect to the noise you just talked about. But in verse 4, he says, do not do so to Yahweh your Elohim. So I'm thinking, how do I destroy the authority of Elohim in my life? And in verse 5 it says, but seek the place which Yahweh your Elohim chooses out of all your tribes to put his name there. So in my life I'm asking, where is his authority? And for me the answer is here. And going further to verse 8, it says, do not do as we're doing here today, each one doing whatever is right in his own eyes. And here is the noise again. We don't want to do what we think is right. We don't want to listen to authority. And he's saying, verse 9, because you have not yet entered the rest and inheritance which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you. So to enter the rest, we need to stop listening to that noise and just listen to the leadership and submit to that.
Amen.
And just to finish here in verse 13, guard yourself that you do not offer your ascending offering in every place that you see, except in the place which Yahweh chooses. So that for me is just to listen to leadership, give up yourself, your own stuff, and just listen.
Amen. Amen. Listen, I really appreciate it, but I want to make sure that we're not ending up in that cultish mindset. He's right about every single thing he said, but there's a step before that. You must find, vet, and discover where the anointed appointed is, where those fivefold guys is. We talked about that from Ephesians, right? The fivefold ministry. Where are those people? So when you find them, though, that's when you must do what Anders is saying. That's what it's talking about here. Problem is, most of you ended up just at the local church because it happened to be local, convenient. You didn't check the guy out. Matter of fact, every few years there was a different one there anyway because they rotated him in, rotated him out, or they retired or some other thing. But you got to look for that and find it because you need it. And then when you find it, then you do what he says. But that's what he said. I looked for it, the place where Yahweh chose. And to me, that's here is what he said. But I want to make sure you don't minimize your responsibility to do the presetting of finding that. Okay? And by the way, finding that doesn't mean that you have to know and understand every bit of my background, education, and where I studied. No, go look at the teaching that's going on. What was Peter's qualification? Fisherman. What yeshiva did he go to? None. Do you understand what I'm saying? No, but you go and you start listening to teachings. You observe, watch the way the leadership works. Coming here is a great way to see just how serving this leadership is and see how hard we work. Okay? I mean, that's a big part of this. You will not understand what we do until you see us here. Some of you, though, will go home saying, but he never talked to me. And he walked by me 5 times. He didn't even look at me. But how many of you, and I don't want all 300 of you to do this, but how many of you have invited me to sit with you at a meal or saved me a seat? I'm always coming in last. And there's a reason for that. I'm really have a hard time with my ADHD standing in a line. I'm just being honest. So I'll either go right past the line and sit down and wait till there's no line, or I just don't even show up till there's no line. But the thing is, you'll all make these comments because you'll put that all on me and through your perception. Or you could have watched and observed and said, you know, I've been to places where the pastor just shows up, he greets people at the door, doesn't seem to be doing anything, he leaves and the personal interaction, would you get that with most of the pastors you know? Where he's available from any hours all the way till 3 in the morning, and you can go and sit, and you can make those times and pray. They don't do that. Now, I'm not saying that you should think I'm great because I do it. I'm just doing it because I'm trying to show you that's what I think it's supposed to look like. It's a servant leader. Okay, some of you remember doing this in Eureka last feast, where I sat there all night long until I had one person after the next person after the next person. Some of you, right, had taken some of those spots. That's the part that you do. But once you've done that, then you need to do what Anders was talking about. But there's another piece to it. But then you're not allowed to, down the road, get offended by one little piece. All of a sudden that person is, well, obviously he wasn't anointed. What? Just because one thing happened and you didn't like it and you didn't agree with it? That changed everything? All that other stuff you learned just gets thrown out the window? Yeah, but, you know, he didn't shake my hand when he first came in. I'm not exaggerating. That happens. We've had that happen multiple times. People left because I didn't show them enough attention. What time is it? We got time. This is important. I think we have a problem with expectations. Okay? Some of you expect me to do, me meaning this role, okay? Not talking about me personally. Expect the leadership role to do things that we actually are not obligated to do. And I get people so mad at me because I don't do things I'm not obligated. I am not obligated to become your friend. I'm not obligated to be social with you. I'm not obligated to hang out with you. I'm not obligated to eat bread with you, shake your hand, hug you, even any of that stuff, ever. That's not my job. I am obligated to do the role of helping to make sure you can get from here to there safely. Okay? From where you are to the kingdom. And so that doesn't mean that when you move here, you should expect that you'll have lunch with me all the time, or get a phone call, or hang out. I have zero blue. I don't hang out. But you'll say, but I see you all the time for hours sitting with people. Go sit near them and see what I'm doing for hours. I'm not just hanging out. And if you ever see me hanging with a group of people, you'll notice that when that part sort of stops, the part that I'm sort of working while I'm sitting there, I tend to just get up to go find something else to then work on and do. I'm not there. You know, some of you will have this weird experience, and I'm very rude, I admit it in advance. You'll get invited to my house for Erev Shabbat dinner. Ask some of my friends also who my wife will invite over, like Uncle Bob and them. And after dinner, when there's nothing for me to do, which is the red work, do things, I go down to my office and I start working on the sermon and everything else. And there's people in my house all playing Bible games and talking and having a great time. And some of you would be really offended by that. And I don't mean any offense. We're all broken and damaged and are diagnosable with something. I'm diagnosed with no blue and all red. That really should be a diagnosis. Just like all you blues with no red should be a diagnosis. Okay? But see, you could read into that because it's an expectations problem. Almost all your marriages that have issues, a lot of it is because your wife or your husband isn't meeting your expectations. But if you think about it, did you ever actually share that with each other before you got married? We're going to talk about this afternoon. So I think that really there should be almost like on a regular basis, a brief meeting with every leader with the group, because the group changes and grows and new people come, just to make sure you understand this is what I expect from you and what you should expect from me. A setting of expectation. Because that's where a lot of the noise also comes from, because you get disappointed because I didn't meet your expectation. Well, I never offered you any of those things. Oh man, I had a lady in the congregation absolutely blow a gasket because we were in a gym, although we weren't contracted to use it as a gym. We were there to do a service and have a meal afterwards. And I had been away on a trip, and they had found some balls in the gym, and the kids started playing with them. And apparently when they were playing, first of all, we weren't allowed to do that. We hadn't contracted to do that. One of the kids threw the ball, actually ended up hitting a baby and almost knocking over a guitar. And so one of the other leaders that was there when I wasn't there said, no more. I came back, found out about it, and the lady came up and said, do you know what so-and-so decided and blah, 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 blah? I said, yes, he told me, and I agree with it. She said, well, what am I supposed to do with my children? They get bored and blah, 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 blah. I said, I've not offered a place for your children to be entertained and taken care of. I offered you a service and a meal. If you can't provide anything other than that, take them somewhere else after the service and the meal if they need something else. Okay? And we're sitting in the middle of the oneg, and she screamed at the top of her lungs, well, that sucks. Whoa. Now, being red, I just looked at her and smiled because I knew her and she should have known me. I said, whatever that, nevertheless, I'm not changing my mind. I don't change my mind. I try to be like Yahweh. Once I've thought it through, made a decision, it pretty well stands. My children know that, so they never argue with me in general. I make a decision, they don't argue. Because I don't change my mind. That's a lesson all you parents do. All that mess that you're dealing with, all that noise from your children is because you have let them. Because they know you'll change your mind sometimes. If you never do that, they won't ever make an issue of it. I took my electronics away from my kids for a week one time, and do you know how many times during the week they asked if they could have them back? 0. Anybody think that would work in your house? Oh no, 10 minutes later they're asking for them back. Now, they did try that once when I first, and I gave them a look. I said, if you do that again, we add more time. So are we going to do that anymore? No. You earned this. This is what you get. Get the lesson out of it, and that's the way it is. But if you come and ask me again, I'm adding time. Don't ask me. And so they learned that lesson because I added time the first time. Okay? It was for a day. I said, good, now it's 2 days. You want to continue this discussion? We can go to 3, 4, whatever you want. Not hurting me. And so this woman said, well, I don't think everybody here agrees with you and we should take a vote. I said, we don't vote here. So it doesn't matter if you're right or you're wrong. We're not taking a vote. And I looked at her, I said, you know me 15 years. Why would you think I would take a vote? Did you ever see me take a vote? And she was still jibber-jabbering about this whole thing in the classroom as she was getting her stuff together to leave. And my wife was in the room. She said, you know, whatever the name was, if my husband, she said if, because she said, I'm not just going to say, but if my husband's an anointed appointed and you're still, you might be bringing some trouble. Read your scriptures to find out what happens to those that attack anointed appointeds, even if the anointed appointed is not perfect. Why was David doing what he did? Because he did not want to cross that line, even though at that point Saul was nuts and dangerous. Now, he did extract himself from it. But did David ever say a negative word about Saul? Not a single one. As a matter of fact, he knew he was wrong for going over and cutting his tzitzit off. And he shouldn't have done that. That was disrespectful. And so let's understand this is the kind of thing we're trying to learn, this dynamic, because how we treat leadership here is kind of also how we're treating him. Just the same way with, when you see husbands and wives, how you treat each other, your children are watching, and you expect them to treat you. Well, I don't know well, here it is. I don't know why your son treats me this way, or your daughter treats me. That's what a wife or a husband will say. Oh, maybe it's because of the way you treat me. And they're watching that example. Well, they don't listen, and they talk back, and they do this. I said, well, what do you do with me? And they watch that all day long. Generational cursing right there. How we treat leadership, you reap what you sow. It's very important. Okay, who's next? I'll get off my soapbox again. Okay, Beverly, and then Bill's after that, I guess. Oh, there's one in the back. Okay, go ahead, Beverly.
A couple of things. First one is when I noticed the other day with the noise in my head that I was arguing with Hasatan while Abba was standing there like, why are you arguing? Come on, you know what you're supposed to be doing. So I just wanted to say, I think I spend a lot of time arguing with the other person in me saying, you should be doing this or you shouldn't be doing that. And then I was just waiting patiently. Okay. So anyway, the big piece that I wanted to state was in Deuteronomy 9:14, where it says, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because I was raised church-wise where they teach, Abba is mean and cruel and things like that, and he's just about killing us and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, where it says, leave me alone so that I destroy them and not blot out your name from under the heaven and make of you a nation stronger and greater than they. That hit me because it just shows how much Abba has emotions and that he gets disappointed and he he can control himself, but that he has feelings that he does not want to act on because of the love he has for us. And then it took my mind to where Moses was stating how he presented himself to be killed instead of Abba killing the children of Israel. And that was just very impactful for me, to that type of love for someone to want to Abba to kill them instead of it's just like Messiah, but that's just amazing to me.
Look, there's a couple of things in this place that Beverly's bringing up here. One is Let's be careful with, excuse me, let's be careful with Yahweh's emotions because he expresses things in a way we can understand. But in this case, it was testing of Moses. It's not that he was wanting to blot them out. He wanted to see what Moses would say. Because it says here, Yahweh spoke to me and said, I have seen this people, and look, they are stiff-necked people. So leave me alone, and I'll destroy them and blot out their name from under the heaven, and we'll build one new out of you. We'll start with you. And Moses is like, oh, no. Because you know what? You could, and this is what I get accused of, and every leader gets accused of, you could get full of yourself. You could have a power thing going on. I'm only working with 300 people about in this room. He had roughly almost 3 million people. Wow, that's a kingdom of large size back in those days. He certainly could have gotten sort of that power crazy thing going on. So Yahweh was testing him, saying, well, you know how crazy and stiff-necked these people are. Why don't I just wipe them out and start again with you? See, it's easy to hear the angry voice, leave me alone, then I destroy them, instead of saying, hey, leave me alone, I'll destroy them, we'll start with you. We agree, these guys are nuts. They don't listen, they're stiff-necked. Why don't we just? I mean, you can hear this being a different conversation. And Moses is like, no. But by the way, there was another time when Moses did offer to be killed, but he actually begged for it. Please, if I've done anything that pleases you, don't make me do this anymore, because I'm going to see my sin. I'm going to kill somebody. Take the first one out of every one of those rubber band packs, you might see that face. Okay. It's not easy when you're the leader. And we don't want to lose our temper and, pop our cork, so to speak, and do those things. And Moses knew. What color was Moses? As red as the day is long. Some of you don't like the way I do all this stuff. Would you rather have him in charge? What do you think, Pastor, Shepherd, Rabbi Moses would have looked like in your congregation? Do you think he was having lunch with everybody and just hanging out? He had work to do. Okay? And so, he was like, please, I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to embarrass you. I don't want to bring shame to you. Just kill me so I don't, because I'm about to my last nerve. That's where he was, using our language today. I mean, he was ready. He was ripe and ready to just pop, and who knew what that was going to look like? Understand, that's part of the leadership too. And so when you see a leadership that maybe does get a little bit angry, wonder why they're getting angry, why they're getting frustrated. Maybe there's a good reason. Not that there's an excuse. We should learn to control that, obviously. But it could come from a heart that cares enough and is frustrated enough trying to get you safely there. But you're not helping the matter when you're kicking and arguing and fighting and ignoring and just doing whatever you want. Why? Because back to what it said earlier where Anders quoted, where it says, each one was doing what's right in their own eyes. How many teaching titles did you find in these Torah portions, by the way? Whose eyes are you right in? What are you thinking? It says, do not think in your heart of the matter. A lot of teachings that get touched in this whole little sections here. Because Deuteronomy basically touches to everything. It's all covered in here. It touches on every single thing. So it's very powerful. Okay, who had it next in the back? Okay, over here. Jeremy?
Yeah, now we're going to touch on tithing for beginners. The end of Deuteronomy 14 in 28 and 29, it touches on the third tithe.
Yep.
Which I'm not that familiar with because I have never done a third tithe.
I noticed that in the mail. I said I haven't seen any.
Hopefully that's going to change here.
I'm teasing. That was a joke. That was a joke.
Right on. So I wanted your opinion. No.
Look, Jeremy and I are buddies. He gets it. We can tease each other, but that's cool.
But anyway, it says at the end of every third year, you'll bring out the tithe of your increase. So I know first tithe we send in as we get it. Second tithe we hold back until the feasts and use it. So the third tithe something we should be sending in along with our first tithe, or is that something we hold to the end of the year? And then another question real quick is it talks about the Levites and everybody, the sojourners and widows in your gates. So maybe some clarification on gates too.
Okay. The first thing is, understand that some of the processing, if Curtis was here processing, of this third tithe understanding is cultural. What were they actually doing? They were giving this to who? The Levites. When did they generally do this? At the feasts. When they came and brought from the harvest, because the feasts are harvest related. Okay? And so they would bring that harvest tithe to the feast. So they weren't giving it to them literally like you do every paycheck or whatever pay period you have, or maybe monthly. They did it only 3 times a year. Or at the end of the year, so to speak, when all of the increase has been dealt with. And so you're in a different cultural place. So the methodology and process might be a little different for us today. We're not agricultural generally. We're not going to a temple at all. There's no sacrifices. There are no Levites. Well, there are, but they're not, leading in the way that, because their job was temple service. We're dealing with the Melchizedekian more, which is those are the Torah teachers and instructions, like the 70 elders that work with Moses, as opposed to the Levites who were under Aaron. And so we have a slightly different process. So in that process, the third tithe would be done every third year. I would send it in with your first tithe. Okay? That's question 1. And actually, in the tithing, appreciating the blessings, I think we covered it maybe in more detail. And certainly in the first one, tithing giving for beginners, I tried to break that down. But again, if it's new to you, even if you've heard it a few times, it's still challenging to understand, how do we actually do this? So, the third year tithe, well, somebody might say the very logical question is what year is it? Well, the answer is we don't know. Now, don't listen to the guys out there that claim that they know. And this is, the Shemitah year was this year, and the Jubilee was that year, and they don't know. They're guessing. We lost track of that when the kingdom got dispersed after Rome. We just don't have any idea. There's not enough records to tell us even when exactly a year was when they were doing those things, even in the New Testament. It's hard. There are hints, maybe this, but it's hard to know what year we're in today. So I have made a Deuteronomy 17 decision. Deuteronomy 17, hopefully you should all be aware of. Go look at it. When a decision is too difficult, you don't know what to do, you go to the leadership. Leadership has to make a decision. Leadership's responsible for that decision. You're responsible to comply. And so the wisdom that I felt that I was getting through the Ruach was that what made sense was because so many of you are coming at different times. Some of you started understanding tithing this year. Some of you understood it 10 years ago. Everybody's coming at this from a different place. And so at the time, I believe the best wisdom was given to me through the Ruach, that the way I understood it to be is, and I guess the way I felt led to do this is the lead poisoning thing. I felt led to make a decision that said, you should start your count starting with when you came to learn about it. Because think about how rough that would be for a brand new person coming in and finding out, oh, by the way, this is the third year. Okay, I haven't been tithing at all. I got to do this first tithe. There's a second tithe for the feast, and I got to do it. How do I do that without any preparation, getting my mind wrapped around it, my bank account wrapped around? How do I get the way I run my life financially wrapped around that? Right away, all of that at once. That's too much, I think. So when I prayed about it, I really felt that the Ruach was saying to me, no, have them start counting individually based on their coming to understand. Because that's when you became responsible, is when you came to know. Don't you understand in Scripture, it says you're only responsible for that which you know. Until you knew, you weren't responsible for it. Okay? And so, and by the way, some of you think, well, then I don't want to know anything. I have no responsibility. Ignorance is bliss. But what does it say? To those who he gives a little and they take care of it, he'll give more. Those he gives a lot, he'll give even more. You want to have a lot of responsibility so that you can get more. Okay? And so, for those of you that, this is now let me balance it a little bit more. If you just came to understand the third tithe right now, After Sukkot starts your third tithe year. The year for tithing starts after Sukkot. That's when you start tithing for the next year. Because after all, Sukkot was the last thing you needed the second tithe for. Okay, your second tithe was working you through the feast cycle. At the end of Sukkot, you no longer need it for the feast cycle. A new cycle is going to begin when you get to Passover. So you start accumulating the funds you need for Passover at the end of Sukkot. And any excess that you would have by Shemini Atzeret, by the end of Sukkot, and then that last day, 8th day, you would then put into the offering box, so to speak. You'd put it in there because you're not to continue keeping it to next year. Because if you did that a few times, you'd think, well, I got lots of money in the bank, why do I have to second tithe? Then you would stop being obedient. Now, there's been I hate to say the word dispensation, but I think that's appropriately used here, that those of you who are traveling across the seas and from far away like that, who just can never afford to come unless you took 2 years to accumulate it, I also believe that's a Deuteronomy 17 decision, that if you counsel about it, we may agree to let you accumulate it for 2 years so that you can come once. Like the people from Australia or New Zealand, where a plane ticket is thousands of dollars per person. I don't know, $2,000-$3,000 for a plane ticket. See, we're used to flying around, and we're upset when it's more than $300 or $400 for the plane ticket. Okay, it's several $1,000s to fly to places like Australia. All right, so you may have to accumulate a little bit more. And so that, though, you only do with counsel. Don't just make that choice for yourself. Well, Rabbi said, no, I said you need to talk to me first. Okay? So that we are clear on it and it goes through counsel. So when it comes to third tithe, my decision has been, if you're pretty much close to the beginning of the year, let's say you only found out about it in January. Well, then January is so close to the beginning, like not too far from Sukkot, okay, that could still be counted as year one. But if you only found out about this like in August, well, you're almost done with the year already. That doesn't really count as year one. Start counting after Sukkot. So think about, like rounding up, rounding down, that kind of thing we learned in math. Just think about, when did you first find out about this? If there was more year left than less, then count it as year one. If there really wasn't that much year left, then you start counting after Sukkot. That's year one. That would be the beginning of your year. Remember, Leviticus 25 shows us the counting of years really starts with Yom Kippur. Well, Yom Kippur is in the middle of a month. The feasts have not finished, and you use the second tithe for feasts. And you're supposed to announce the release at Yom Kippur. And the first of that month is, we call it Rosh Hashanah, the head of counting of years, because it's the first day of the month when the release and the announcement of the release happens. Okay? So, hopefully that all makes sense and answers the question for Jeremy. All right? Now, he did ask this part about the fatherless and the widow and all of that. Well, how many of you have ever been taken advantage of financially and gave people stuff that you really wish you hadn't have done? So why not better let the ministry make those mistakes and make those decisions? And that's why it's our responsibility. I'm not going to ask you to raise hands, but a lot of you are here on some level of benevolence, helping with your meals or helping with your room or whatever it is. We're doing thousands of dollars of that. That's not bragging. That's just to say that's part of this. We are here to make sure we're taking care of the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow within our gates. And by our gates, meaning within our community. Now that's within MTY. We're not helping everybody in other communities. We've got to help our community. That's where the funding comes from. That's where the funding comes from, and we do it to help our community. Does it make sense? Okay? So that's not to say you couldn't do that, but this way you're more protected that you don't make the mistakes. All right? But I can assure you that we do take care of a lot of people. And we are very rare to say no to someone with benevolence. Now, bear in mind that before you ask for benevolence, you should have done everything you can do. We should be the last resort. Okay, so if you're thinking, well, I really wanted to buy that big screen TV, but then I really won't have enough tithe to go, so what I'll do is I'll ask for benevolence and buy the TV. You might want to cut out the 5 times a week Starbucks to make sure you can come. You might want to, you understand? You should be doing your side before you ask for Yahweh's money. Don't think that I'm acting like you're asking for my money. It's not my money. But I have a stewardship of his money. Is that fair? Now, this isn't bragging, but I'll give you an example of what it might look like. Had a lady many years ago, had asked to come to the feast. She was on fixed income. She was on disability. She had health issues. She had never really gotten to go to something like this. I said, no problem. I said, when you come, bring whatever you can, and I will cover the rest. So she showed up. And she very sheepishly came up to my desk. I was doing all the check-ins at the time. And I was like, and she looked kind of nervous, or I don't know what it was. It just had this look. I said, what's the matter? And she takes out a $20 bill and she hands it to me. I said, thank you, okay. She goes, well, that's all I have. I said, well, what did I tell you on the phone? She said, well, to bring all I had. And I said, so is that all you have? She said, yeah. I said, okay, so I'll take care of the rest. Go and enjoy the feast. And she looked at me like, really? I mean what I say. Okay? And so we basically, generally, we take care of everybody we can. But sometimes, especially if you've had it more than once, depending on if you're in a health disability, whatever, we'll take care of it as much as we need to. But if you can absolutely, at some point, get yourself fixed, and we might have to talk about why you don't seem to ever get your finances right. What are you doing with your money? Or why don't you get a better job? Or whatever it is. Because some of you are quite capable, and you're just so used to laying sideways at the either public or spiritual trough. And just lapping it up instead of standing up and getting on and going and getting it done. We'll talk about that a little bit this afternoon too. All right. So hopefully that answered Jeremy's question. Okay, Janet? I thought Bill had his hand up. Did we get yours already covered, or? No, his hand was up before. That's okay. Let Bill go first, then we'll get it to Janet. Go ahead, Bill. You have the lights off, that means it's on.
Okay.
It's weird, but you know.
Okay, it's a little backwards. Rabbi, I just want to encourage you. I don't know if this would be an encouragement or not, but
bring it up to your mouth.
I want to encourage you. You're a wonderful blessing to both Beth and I, and so is the whole congregation. We're so glad to be here. This is our first Sukkot, and but we know what it's like to be frustrated with other people. Moses came down off the mountain the first time with the tablets in his hand, and he saw his people. He's just been all those days with the Father up on the mountain and learned everything he needed to know, and he came down, and in his frustration, he threw down the tablets, smashed them to pieces. Thankfully, the Father did not let him do that again, but when he takes him back up on the mountain again to give him the law again, this time he had him build a box and put it in him so he couldn't smash them. Don't give up on us, Rabbi.
Appreciate that. And by the way, it's not really clear if he was smashing them because he was frustrated or because he felt they didn't deserve them, or a combination of the two. You know, it may have been because, I mean, but how many of you as parents have like left for a few minutes and come back and seen what your children have done, and you looked at them with, are you kidding me? That's where Moses was like, you gotta be blah, 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 kidding me. Bleep, bleep, bleep. How, you know. Anybody had that experience? Okay. Anybody hear your parents say that to you when you were a kid? I don't know, I was just playing and stuff. Okay, you know. I was in the kitchen trying to make something, but there's now food on the ceiling. How did that happen? You know. Anybody had kids? How do they get it up there? You know. And it's not necessarily like a piece of meat or something stuck there. It's like something that squirted out of a ketchup bottle or something. Like, I can't squeeze it hard. How did you do that? You know. But that was Moses, like, after what you've been through, and just, really? Well, their leader was completely sane. He said, I don't know. I mean, I just threw all the gold in there and a calf walked out. Group therapy starts on Thursdays at 1, Aaron, you might want to show up, okay? I don't know. I just threw the gold in there and this calf walked out. Are you kidding me? Okay. All right, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Janet.
Turn it on? Oh, thank you, Rabbi. A follow-up question.
Just to fix the confusion, it's not that it's on or off. The light means that the mute is on. That's all. So when the light is on, it's muted. And so the light's just telling you it's muted. So when you push the button, the light goes off, it means it's on.
Okay. Follow-up question from the third tithe. So I understood initially that the offering was separate from whatever was left over from that whole tithe. That's my first question. And my second question has to do with, well, we've been reading the Varim, and I always think about Yahweh bringing them out from the land of Mitzrayim, how I was delivered from that slavery where I was before he opened my eyes. So what will be that good land? Is that only talking about eternal life with him? And whatever they had to conquer, those giants or whatever the fears they had, has to do with our walk and what we have to go through till we get to the end? Or is there something more that I'm missing?
No, I think you're connecting the dots very well. Usually first of all, when it comes to the tithing thing, there's two things that are required in Scripture. Okay, one, he specifies exactly how to calculate it. It's called tithing. Okay, you've got a first tithe and a second tithe and a third tithe. Then there's the other thing called offerings. Okay, you have the maaser and you have the hatruma. You have the tithes and the offerings. The truma is the offerings and the maaser, the tithes. Okay, so you have offerings are something that's just done out of your heart. You feel moved to give an offering. And you're told not to come empty-handed. So every one of you should have put something in that box before the end of this week for that part. That's an offering. That's not your tithes. That's not the money you paid for your room, which could have been out of your second tithe. Okay? That's an offering is above and beyond the tithing system. Did that answer that part of the question? Okay? Now, when I said at the end of this feast, if you have leftover second tithe, you would turn it into an offering. It would turn into something that you're now just going to put in the box because, after all, you need a clean start after Sheminat Atzeret on Tuesday when you start counting and developing all of the tithing that you need for Passover. Okay? The second tithe for that. All right. And the other part of your question is, look, when it talks about the good land, it was talking about the land of Israel when they were coming out of Egypt and where they were going and how they would want to have to dwell in that land, etc. But now that they've been scattered, all of those things now turn to a hint at the future of the kingdom that's coming. But there's also a level where you can look in your own life, cleaning out the beasts in your life, cleaning away the giants and the scary things in your life. The Deuteronomy 8:2, thank you, nobody, for mentioning that. But of course, that was covered in this readings today, right? Deuteronomy 8:2, where I use the metaphor of us all walking through our own wilderness and desert and then being done to be humbled so that we can be tested and proven, right? He said, I led you through the wilderness these 40 years. Well, aren't you going through a wilderness? Some of you have been walking that wilderness at least 40 years. Especially when you start counting from the time he's revealed himself to you. You start getting a number of years in there where he's showing you and he's demonstrating the things that are going to humble you. So don't count your years of life as those 40 years. It's when he starts to show you, reveal himself, and now you're making those changes. You're becoming humbled and starting to submit to him. They had to do that for 40 years. Guess what? Not everybody made it through that. Some of them were older, and some of them also made the mistake of not going into the land. And so you have that going on. So yes, so the metaphors kind of work both ways. Yes, he's talking about the kingdom, but yes, he's also talking about your life. Okay? All right, so hopefully that answered that question. Okay, excellent. I just want to see if there's other things in here in my notes that haven't been covered by anybody yet, but where's the mic? Okay, Mr. Nate Taylor, go ahead.
Just reflecting on our Torah has been given to us as a history teaching, and we've learned throughout history those that fail to remember our history are doomed to repeat it. Just a word of encouragement that as we look at these stories that are brought forth through Torah and how Rabbi is helping us to walk this out so we don't repeat those same mistakes of the past, especially as we look forward to the millennium in the kingdom, just to be on guard that it is just as simple for us to make the same mistakes that they do regarding leadership, regarding idols, regarding all these things. And we're coming out of Egypt. We've come out of Egypt. And my encouragement to all of us, myself included, is to lay all that stuff, all that gold, silver, all those things that we thought were precious back there where we came from. And we thought, oh, maybe we can hold on to that. As Rabbi has taught, let's lay it all down, take a few years and come under the leadership. And even sometimes, like he said, if it gets rough or gruff or, oh, it seems so, like he presented that a little meaner than I thought. You know what? I love it. I'm submitting it's Yahweh that he is working through this man. That's my opinion after we have vetted him thoroughly and MTOI. And learning not to get so offended and leave our feelings on the floor. So just wanted to encourage you in that. And then also with the tithing. When I first came here, I started learning about tithing. I was like, wow, what? There's a second tithe? What? There's a third tithe? What? So I did my own research on that, and I was like, wow, this is really a thing. Goes way back. I've done my own research. And through Rabbi's help and instruction, he's helping us to become more obedient in that tithe. Our heart is to be really like on the tithe. And we're trying to get our finances in order. We're trying to get our life in order to where we can, hopefully, next Sukkot will be our third year that we have come to that, and hopefully we'll be able to financially get to where we can do a third tithe. How many of you enjoy having our brothers from Australia and Sweden and Norway and other places that can't be here? Just think about all the brothers and sisters who we haven't met yet who are trying to be obedient. And if we do this thing according to Torah and the way that Rabbi is teaching it concerning our first, second, and third tithe, we should all be able to get somewhere under an umbrella. Think about if, I could only come up with $500. Rabbi knows who is being obedient or making the very effort. And if we were giving our benevolence and being able to bless them, our family was blessed the first time that we came here. I'd never heard of a rabbi or a teacher or anybody saying, look, just get here, we'll take care of it. Our family was part of the product of that benevolence. I had only learned of this a week. It was Yom Kippur when I heard, Yom Kippur, 3 years ago when I first heard of MTOI. Hopefully we'll get a chance to share our testimony of where we were at, my wife and I, at that particular moment. It was not good.
So when you said to me, what you're selling, I'm not buying, I'd already given you benevolence? Just want to be clear about that. Because and by the way, I don't get all hung up on it. I don't remember necessarily if I've helped you or not. And who I get, this is the first you're telling me, I didn't even remember I did that. And I appreciate that. But it goes to show you, that's where his head was at back then. He'd gotten benevolence and he still was like, but I'm not interested.
Right, I was, yeah, absolutely.
This is not the same man. This is a man I love and he loves me, and I know him and he knows me.
Amen.
And you guys really do. The ones, especially if you're struggling with authority, I'm telling you, he had no interest in any of that when I met him.
None.
I mean, and he was clear about it. But he has done the one thing that I asked him to do. Give me 6 months or a year, whatever it was.
6 months.
Okay? And try it. But do it for real. Really try it. Mm-hmm. And talk to them. Talk to Dawn, talk to Nate, and find out their story, because they're not unique. I've done this with many, but they're open about it. And because they're open about it, I think that especially if you think, well, I can't trust authority, and I don't. They were that. They were there. Okay? And in strength, I mean in spades, they were definitely there. But I punched through the noise pretty good one night, and I said, you have a choice here. What are you going to lose? Mm-hmm. You know? How about let's try this? Now they got me on speed dial.
But we were able to receive that blessing. But I had to humble myself. I couldn't let my own manly pride, well, I'm the man, I should be able to. I had to humble myself before leadership at that point in time, who I did not claim as leadership, and allow myself to be helped. And I'm so thankful for that, because it was because of that day and that feast that my marriage is restored, not only restored, but it's more full than it's ever been. Our family is restored. Our family is more full than it's ever been. So the fruit is definitely there of an anointed appointed. Just from now that's just our perspective. It's your responsibility to vet them out, as he said before. So I want to encourage you in that. And he did. Another thing that I tested him on is he said, you are responsible for paying this back if you choose to pay this back. That's between you and him. I will not mention it again. I will probably forget. And for a year,
have I ever asked you for it?
He has never. For a year, I thought I was waiting for it. Every time I ran into him, sometimes, hey, do you remember you still owe this month? Never once even got an inkling. And I was sitting there waiting for it, like it's coming. Not coming. And those of you that think you've been counseled before, I always try to think that, oh, I've heard this. And this goes with his teachings too. Oh, I've heard that about this, or I know what he's going to say. He's blown our mind, blown my mind. It's like it's not what I would think it would come from him. And the fruit is there. So for those of you who are men here, take the time. I'm sure more than likely he's probably going to tell you something that you probably never would have thought of. And the fruit, and if you're obedient, the fruit is there.
And you probably won't like it either.
You may not. There's been times where I have not. And he will tell you. You probably even heard it over the phone. Okay, Rabbi, I'm going to do that. Yes, sir. You know? And I do. And the fruit, just because of, like you said, it's the process that is the blessing. So I just want to encourage you in both.
Amen. Amen. Now, by the way, I do remember that we did help you. I didn't realize it was the first one. That's because I knew that you had money that you had said you would pay back, and that you would, and I never chased you for it. But I just didn't realize it was from that first one. That's all. It's just my brain, because it's been so long now, I didn't realize it was the first. That's when that happened. Once I give it to you, if you say that you want to do anything to pay it forward, to pay it back, to help with it, I make sure you know, I am never going to chase you. I will not remember. I don't want that noise in my head. Do you know what it's like when you've lent something or somebody owes you, and every time you see them now, it just drives you and irritates you? I don't want to ever have that noise in my head. Besides which, it's not my money, so if you want to pay it back, you're paying it to him. If he wants us to have it and you don't, he'll give it to us some other way. Okay? I've told this story before, but we had somebody in England give us a $1,000 check, and for some reason, you know how the banks won't cash a check if it's too old? Well, the checks that she bought in that country, they put a little number at the bottom of the check when you bought the book, not the date you put on top, and that date was probably 2 years old. And my bank wouldn't cash the check, even though clearly the date on top, which was written by hand, was only like 3 weeks ago. Excuse me. So they wouldn't cash the check. And I said to the cashier, I said, you do realize that if we don't get this check, most people, when you contact them, will not send another one, especially if it's their first one and it took everything just to do that. So if there's any way you could do this, do it. Otherwise, we're just not going to get this $1,000. And true enough, I contacted the lady, and she said, well, you know, I can't do it a different way. Well, so we never got it. 3 days later, 4 days later, something like that, one of the people that normally does tithe to us on some sort of a basis sent an extra $1,000 with a note saying, my wife said that I was supposed to send this to you. She didn't know why. She said you would. I learned that lesson. I already knew that lesson because when I came home, my wife was like, what happened? I said, well, and we actually needed the money at that point. We were just getting started in this again, and we didn't have a whole lot of money and in the ministry coming in. And I said, don't worry about it. Yahweh wants us to have it, we'll have it. And so it came from another direction. So that's why when I do give the benevolence and stuff, now some people have said to me, I probably messed up. I should have been able to afford to come, but I need help. I'll pay it back. You know what? Most of you haven't. And most of you are not in the room. I'm saying most of the people, they don't. I don't worry about it. I don't get angry about it. I don't bother about it. Abba still blesses us. We're still growing. Things are still moving forward. That's on you. But don't volunteer to do that unless you're going to do it. I don't require you to do that. I didn't ask him to do that. I said, look, if you want to pay back, it's up to you. Because he admitted, this was so soon, I didn't know anything about this, I wasn't prepared. I make enough money, I should have been able to do this, but it was not a good timing. So he said, I'd like to pay it back. Okay, great, pay it back. It's on you. Okay? So just understand that. Just understand that. It's very important that we get those kind of things. But like I said, all of you that really are struggling, and by the way, when he says you need to vet me out, that doesn't mean that you need to call my third grade teacher or find out all my resume and the bosses and do a background check and all that. That's not what it's talking about. It's talking about taste of, see where, because you know what? I lived another life. I mean, I've done other jobs, but it's this that you want to know about. So talk to somebody that's interacted with this. This is the vetting you need to do, right? And so that's the vetting I asked him to do. I said, do what I ask you to do with letting me help you. Give me 6 months. From one feast to the next feast. That's how you vet. Okay? You listen to the teachings. Okay, that sounds pretty good. That works. You call for a counsel session and say, okay, that worked out okay. I mean, that's how you vet. Observe, experience, taste. Well, I just think all pastors are this way, all rabbi, blah, blah. Fine. How are you going to know what I'm like until you interact with me? Try it. You know? Okay, who's next? Actually, you know what? We're going to have to wrap it up. Yeah, it's 5 minutes to lunch, so we're going to need to close this up and give you time to get over there. So sorry about that, Daweed, but, well, you had a comment earlier, and it was good. I do apologize for people who didn't get to go today. I got a little wordy on a few little soapboxes and a little preachy, but I think it was worth it. I think it was important, okay? All right? By the way, I'm not under the weather, but the weather is causing the allergies to get into my throat, and that's all this is. But just so some of you might think, I hope he's not getting sick. No, it's the congestion, you know, from the allergies. All right, so let's go ahead and get someone to close us in prayer. Where's the mic? Okay, Nate jumped up with his hand, so why don't you hand him the mic? Okay, you do it. You close this, Daweed. There you go.
Thank you, Rabbi. Yahweh Israel, thank you for all that we have heard from your word today. Help us to apply it all and do it all and listen to our Rabbi and not go to other people or other places or other things and get all that other noise in our head, but help us to clear out all the junk and listen to you and what you're saying through the people that you have delegated to teach us. I ask that you would help us to continue to do your word. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen.
Amen. Amen. All right. So lunch is in about 3 or 4 minutes. Don't forget that in the afternoon, we're going to come back here, and we have the couples class, and then we have continuing from there into up to the challenge class. If they bring them down, they're going to bring them to the BRC. I don't know what they're doing. What did they do yesterday or Tuesday? They're bringing them down? Okay, so they should probably be in the Blue Ridge Center meeting you there, okay? If we find out anything different, we'll let you know over there. So just go to the Blue Ridge Center, and we'll inform you over there. Now we'll just go to lunch.